Ugh, the Spongebob Saga, the gift that really doesn't stop giving. God, I wish it would stop giving. We've covered all sorts of Spongebob movies over the years, and they do just keep on coming. I've got to hop in at some point to make a compilation on this, because otherwise this is just gonna keep waiting as another Spongebob rendition appears in 6 months' time. Come see the very rapid and unending crash off of a cliff of the quality of Nickelodeon movies. What a journey, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome everyone to the new Amazing series, where we're starting off with the very first Spongebob movie. Yes, we've spoken at length about the terrible Spongebob movies, numbers 2, 3, Sandy, and presumably Plankton, but let's go back to our roots, back to the nostalgic, rose-tinted gem of childhood, and pick out just what makes a movie so amazing. It's the same chronological long format as the Terribles, so let's get into things. This is the Amazing Spongebob Movie 1. So, we start off dramatic. The music being so unlike the SpongeBob show, but also so inviting to a whole new adventure. It's anticipation, and surprisingly, a live-action bit now. But none of that late-stage Paramount stuff. This is actually quotable.
Dinghy off the port bow! Dinghy off the port bow!
Remember when kid shows knew how to make kids excitable? Anyway, this is going to be the age-old storyline reality where pirates know of SpongeBob as a TV show, and it's a treasure of its own.
Tickets to the Spongebob Movie!
Oh, take me back to that kind of plotline. Could you imagine what it'd be like nowadays? But anyway, what we have now is a shanty version of the SpongeBob intro, which is just clearly a love letter to the original show, to an extent we have literally not seen in decades now. You can just feel the love that this movie has to share, and somehow more meta than post-Marvel SpongeBob content. I love it. And it's not like they could never bring it back. But now we really begin, and it's from one parody to another. Pirates at the cinema, and now a crime scene parody. A sketch, essentially, that anyone can lean into, over-dramatizing something mundane.
A Krabby Patty with cheese! No cheese! Oh.
Get a hold of yourself, Eugene.
It's so simple, it almost seems stupid that this kind of vibe is lost in later years. You know it's a joke, you know it's roleplay, and you too could join in to enjoy the fun of it all. And it's not SpongeBob playing the role of SpongeBob being his doofy childish self, he's already in character, morphing like he does. Something I feel modern day Paramount is too afraid to do in case the kids don't realize he's SpongeBob. You know what I mean? SpongeBob doesn't play anymore. You then got some great audio work to emphasize the drama. And all to save the day as SpongeBob fantasizes what it's like to be the manager of the Krusty Krab.
Hip hip! Hip hip!
And it was all a dream, of course, but it's set up for SpongeBob's goals to be declared the manager at the new Krusty Krab 2. It has to be him. I mean, look at his achievements.
374 consecutive Employee of the Month awards.
That's 31 years and 3 months exactly, including this month. And yes, this movie is officially declared as the canonical ending to the full SpongeBob saga. And it makes sense. 31 years puts us very distinctively in the distant future. And a very particular number there, isn't it? Huh? What kind of year would that even put us in? Oh, no. It sounds fully intentional. SpongeBob started in 1999, with 31 years added on top of that. That puts it directly at 2030 as SpongeBob's finale. Somehow, all this modern-day Paramount pushing lines up so far. But come 2031, that's when we can get real mad that SpongeBob is still being dragged through the trenches. God, I am 336 months old. But yes, a couple simple subversions and references later, as well as a surprising 3 for 3 for character nudity gags, and we're off.
Oh, hi, the goofy goober, yeah.
But somehow, this one doesn't feel like actually jingling keys in front of children like the new stuff does. It's thematic to the beats later on. A real masterclass of writing to get all this snuck in there early. But the setup's not done yet. We've got the Plankton storyline, and what better way to start off than with another quotable line?
Hello, I like money.
So direct, so unapologetic. And it works as a really simplistic exposition for all the characters, as there is a lot of extra lines added in here to kind of set up who these people are in case you've never watched SpongeBob before. It's kind of weird to see nowadays since everyone knows SpongeBob, but it's there. In the canon ending, introductory lines like,
Oh, Karen, my computer wife.
And also a lot of just sound humor, which I don't recall happening anymore. But I still think works really well. It's like bait for children to mimic to keep them entertained. And add in a cheeky adult reference for the parents to be entertained as well, and you're golden. And with the villain's scheming established, we can loop it effortlessly into the plot by connecting him to Spongebob now.
I'm ready. Promotion. I'm ready.
Not that it needs to go anywhere, it's just to show that nobody takes him seriously.
Promotion. I'm ready. Promotion.
Stupid kid.
The grand opening of the Krusty Krab 2!
And now it's the moment we've all been waiting for, Manager. And you know where it's probably going, so what's the good gags along the way? Well, for a start, it's more sound bait humor.
Yeah! Ow! Shh.
And then it's cringe humor.
The most embarrassing thing you've ever seen?
But done with a lot of repetition to keep the longevity of it going, whilst also not overstaying its welcome. SpongeBob is given a description not from Krabs, but from everyone else trying to fill in the gap.
A ding-a-ling. Wingnut.
Knucklehead McSparzatron!
But after a bit of everyone insulting our protagonist, something nowadays relegated to the sidekick character for some reason, we then get to our thematic conflict.
And to be a manager, you have to be a man.
Bit of a stretch and more of a gag, but you get the idea. It's also a very perfect character development for someone like SpongeBob, and is only more obvious in the modern age as Paramount has no idea what to do with this guy. At this point, he's frozen in time as an eternal gag-slinging kid that is the butt of all the jokes. But back here, when Steven Hillenburg was at the reins, it's clear that he truly understood his characters and knew how to challenge them in a satisfying way. Having SpongeBob address his childishness with the goal of being more mature, but also likely doing so from his ignorant and youthful perspective, is just such great storytelling from a character perspective, and is colossally different to the SpongeBob we get now. And then pull back from the intellectual writing chops, you can always chuck in some classic wordplay with,
You understand it, you understand?
plug in a subversion of a SpongeBob catchphrase,
I'm ready. Depression. I'm ready.
which is crazy to hear out of a kid's character's mouth and is also a great song from the Spongebob Movie video game. I'll start playing that now. And then one more new joke for you.
Did you see my butt?
And you've created a classic kids movie, high in quality as well, and we haven't even reached the parts this movie is notorious for. Now we have a new expansion to the SpongeBob lore, King Neptune. Is it a criticism that King Neptune already existed in the series by this point and the movie did a redesign of him? Maybe. It's apparently because there was a conflict between Paramount and Nickelodeon at the time that didn't lift until 2014. But hey, it could always be worse. They could have always, chosen to completely switch out the mythological source in the first place. Wouldn't it be awful if instead of a different King Neptune, we got instead, say, a King Poseidon? Ugh, that just sounds awful conceptually. Or worse, look at the concept art's idea. A live-action Neptune that looks so very modern Paramount, but no, we're in the good times here, okay? With a completely fair extension of the cast. Perhaps even the best version.
20 years in the dungeon it is.
Daddy!
Establishing a cruel king and a kind daughter. But also, this is our first celebrity appearance. It's not a live-action face talking mostly as they normally would, it's a voice acting role, and so is much more seamless into this animated world. Mindy is a young Scarlett Johansson, 19 years old at the time. Does it count as a celebrity cameo? I count it! And this whole expansion is also an interesting addition of a medieval tone to SpongeBob that I feel is kind of lost nowadays. Or it's vaguely there, but watered down. But look at these fish designs. Immediately more interesting to see. Anyway, we get our recurring gag of the Bold King.
I'm gonna be bald?
Tinning!
As well as more sound baits. Man, just add a perfect cut in these screams and this movie is basically doing modern internet humor. Plankton steals the crown for his evil plan, and with it, we can swing right back to SpongeBob again.
I got it!
Time for some payoffs at 1/5 of the way into the movie. It's looping back to that goofy goober song from before.
We're all goofy goobers, yeah.
And another new expansion to the lore. A mix of what I assume is Chuck E. Cheese for kids and a pub for adults, where you can get a McDonald's Happy Meal.
I'm supposed to get a toy with this? Thanks.
As well as getting drunk off of Sundays. I would say it's real daring to put an alcohol reference in a kids movie, but this is a pretty common thing, especially in the early 2000s era. Still fun to watch nonetheless, with the mess being an additional gag against the most straight man employee of all time. Add in another soundbite that is legitimately in my long-term mental library. Waiter! And you're set for a doofy fun time, until eventually being kicked out at 8 a.m. in the morning. Woof. This guy's work shift continued to 8 a.m. and he still has to clean after this? And I thought retail was bad these days. But with newfound bitterness, SpongeBob gets on out of there.
Mr. Krabs.
What follows next is admittedly an incredibly long scene, having multiple sets of people interacting all within or around the Krusty Krab, yet somehow it all just flies by. With the central conflict and quest being established, King Neptune has come to the Krusty Krab, and both titans of personality let their character, quirks flourish at either end.
Squire!
Yes, Your Highness.
Have this poll executed at once.
$101 with cheese, Mr. Squidward, with cheese.
We then get to the actual issue, as Krabs has been framed for the theft of King Neptune's crown and is soon to be put to death. Showcased not simply in text, but in all sorts of creative ways, from doofy handwritten notes to an impromptu voicemail that just spawns in from the side. And of course, some classic soundbite bait again.
My crown is in the Forbidden Shell City!
Both reiterating exposition and being great entertainment for impressionable kids. And it rolls just as simply on to SpongeBob entering the scene with the worst possible circumstances.
Who here has anything to say about Eugene Krabs?
I've got something. I now realize that he's a great big jerk.
So simple and easy of a misunderstanding that only adds more stakes to an already pretty confrontational scene. But any danger still isn't horrific or scary, as when the punishment actually begins, still we have both of these titans of personality cooling the waters a bit, with Krabs' screams being less of a direct, dramatic curdle like Plankton's, and more of yet another bait of a quote.
The underwear's on fire! I'm on fire!
Thank goodness water can spawn back in your clothes. And as for Neptune, who's so far pretty large and intimidating, is also able to calm the Jets by showing some vulnerability.
And between you and me, my hair is thinning a bit.
Now, not such a scary antagonist. This is just cartoon violence. And some deprecating humor that lasts for decades doesn't hurt either. This scene then transpires further as Mindy enters the sequence and puts SpongeBob specifically on the path to Shell City and returning Neptune's crown, with more great use of personality traits in such simple executions like,
Where's your love and compassion? Look at this little guy.
honestly, with her whole bit being that she will one day be Queen of the Sea, I wouldn't be opposed to a new movie showing her as the Queen. She's a great character that hopefully modern writers could still use decently. Though I guess that also implies a canonical death of the king, so maybe not. Anyway, Patrick also appears with his stupid sidekick traits showing as well.
In exactly 10 days. He can do it in 9, 8, 7, 6.
She's pretty, SpongeBob.
I stole them from my father.
You're hot.
Bit uncalled for, but it's another example of introducing us to the character back in the days when people didn't necessarily know them. Weird, but still masterful writing. And then finally, after the royals go, we have the final number of setup.
Patrick, Squidward, and I.
Pass.
And so, with a classic screenshot gag to end us off with,
Your life is in our hands.
we're set to begin the adventure, and what a corker of a start this whole sequence has been. Lengthy, yet somehow it all just flows into each other flawlessly. SpongeBob and Patrick then jump into another new creation for this world.
The Paddy Wagon.
The vehicular figurehead for the movie, and just a great idea. It's got some gags, it's got some interesting designs, and the writers even noted to mention the contradiction of SpongeBob's driving issue.
You don't need a license to drive a sandwich.
Which is just a great attention to detail. No notes. Well, actually, I have one note. There's one gag here that I think doesn't work, simply because it's an entirely neutral bit and doesn't really appear in SpongeBob's work in futures. It's this. Coming off more like a comic strip, it's interesting to see because I think it's a relic of a style that I guess the team felt didn't belong. Or I just never noticed them. That's plausible too. You've got things like the 2 hours later, which is kind of the comic strip aesthetic. But yeah, it's one of those things you just don't see that much. We then get a brief scene of Plankton at the Krusty Krab, followed by another quick stop at a gas station for the boys. Now we've done such a long sequence, it's time for quick flashes to keep retention up. And you know what these guys have to say.
What'll it be, fellas? Mustard or ketchup?
Once again, it's just an iconic scene, and it's barely the lines that make it, it's the laughter. From anyone.
Who's the kid now?
And being able to entertain without even the words is just masterful through and through. Back to Plankton, and we see his restaurant is thriving off of a lie. And after some details that are obvious, but also kind of dark if you think about it too hard,
I haven't felt this giddy since you agreed to be my wife.
I never agree.
we use Plankton to establish our real antagonist.
He's a vicious, cold-blooded predator!
The editing tells the story this time, as we loop back to a familiar sight at that gas station with a slightly different ending. Still not too scary though, the boys don't seem to be in pain, just inconvenienced. As for real scary, at least to me as a kid, I found this next scene pretty tense. It's the thug tug scene. SpongeBob and Patrick find their stolen sandwich and need to get the key inside this rough pub. A pretty decent side quest, fully covered in a single scene. Inside is all your classic manly tropes.
I got no reason!
And hey, thematic to the theme of being a man. So the boys in their weenie states go for the classic distraction technique.
I have to use the bathroom.
And hey, a great micro gag of the tumbled guy reversing back up again. And with that clearly not working too well, the boys meet in the bathroom. This place has a weird liminal space vibe to me, you know what I mean? Somehow this room feels different. It's weird. I feel like you could put together several bathroom real talk scenes in movies. It'd be really interesting to see. Anyway, while talking privately, they accidentally produce a bubble. And with a little bit of childish whimsy, the two are off on one. More sound bait for kids to latch onto, and yeah, it's kind of iconic too. I think what I also especially like about the animation of this scene is whilst we've had flourishes in detail and editing and of course writing, this time it's the lighting and the colors that really stand out, as the bubble literally englows the room in more pinkish tones. You can see it slowly building across at the start. It's just high quality animation, clearly bumped up by the theatrical budget.
Hey! Who blew this bubble?
Maybe it was.
Shut up!
I think this was an attempt to cool the jets off of this next scary villain, but I didn't feel much better watching this as a kid. This is real scary. But as the whole pub is lined up and grilled, the worst trial is put up front.
No baby can resist singing along to this.
Still a goofy premise, but somehow pretty terrifying. And it's a chance for the animation to flourish some more with some animated, overly detailed shots of SpongeBob and Patrick practically melting from the pressure. Thankfully, it all drops.
Goofy, goofy, goober, goobers, yeah!
It's that kind of body diversity you don't really see in the series or movies much after this. We already had medieval guys from before, but these ruffians look pretty neat too. It's all just visual eye candy, back at a time where I guess they felt more experimental and wanted to expand in genuinely creative ways. Anyway, they're beaten senseless by every able-bodied patron in the bar. Nice of them to be pretty open in mentioning able-bodied. This is clearly, minus the incredibly violent beatings, a pretty inclusive place. And just as quickly, the bar is distracted and the boys drive away, car in tow. Now it's time for a brief bit with Squidward of all people. I guess he didn't get to fully pass. He's now our stand-in for the everyman, watching the population of this backwater town choose buckets as their apparel of choice. I guess somebody had to take on that role. Always good to have a straight man in a world as quirky as SpongeBob. Do the modern movies have that? But anyway, soon enough, Squidward comes to learn that Plankton is behind it.
Plankton? Giving? With?
Squidward is the only one to see through Plankton's plans and is happy to confront all about it right here and now.
But you can't fool me. I listen to public radio.
But of course, it's fuel to go into the next phase, which is full-on mind control.
Who can stop me now?
And another edit to showcase the answer. We're just deep into the antics at this point, and it's only up from here, as the boys have made it into man country. And you know, I don't think I noticed this as a kid, but this initial background...
I don't think we don't know how to weed them out.
It's just completely blurry. Is this an animation shortcut or just some odd creative choice? It's there anyway, as the boys are oblivious to the obvious visual danger, and that's kind of the whole scene. You can see the growing of bones, you know where it's going, plenty of time for every kid to notice.
SpongeBob! Make mine a chocolate!
Simple, you don't need to do much more. But the reveal, oh, this is golden. A newly inventive spin of those anglerfish. We've seen it in Finding Nemo, and we see it anew here. And then they run. Sounds like a great time to incorporate a... cut onto Dennis.
We'll be beaten senseless by...
Yeah, he's fine. Just more establishing that he's the real big bad of the movie, and a little Titanic reference chucked in there as well. For good measure. So how do the boys get out of the monster chase? Easy! You know how there's those cosmic vaporwave edits of like The Simpsons? I feel like I get a little bit of that same sense from this shot, of the sheer galactic scale of this eel monster shot. Does this count as another liminal space? Why am I finding liminal spaces in this movie? It's also the birthplace of this screen grabber Patrick. Almost doesn't fit in the frame anymore, but after seeing the extents of the ominous, monstrous trench, SpongeBob...
SpongeBob? Oh, hey, where are you going?
...is calling it quits. And now that we're just halfway through the movie, it's time for a pick-me-up to keep the motivation going. It's Mindy.
Did you see my underwear?
No, Patrick.
Did you want to?
But she comes in with a newfound perspective, and as a way to both split up the monotony of back-to-back side quest scenes and loop this journey back to the problems at home by showcasing the stakes on her clam mirror.
Planktopolis.
Although it's not so much about the plot really, it's the visually creative gags that really keep the movie going.
Ew.
Broken up slightly with the appearance of Dennis. Is this just for us to jump ahead a tad, or is it to show that Dennis is getting closer? Either way works. And we're back to them again, as Mindy changes their mind with fake mustaches. Yet another classic archetype of being a man from a kid's perspective.
Oh my gosh, Patrick, you have a mustache!
And just as quickly, the two bumbling idiots dive into the trench. I think there's really something to be said about having your two protagonists both being the dumb and dumber archetype. Not quite sure how they managed to lose it in, say, the third SpongeBob movie, but compared to the likes of the Sandy Cheeks movie, where SpongeBob is the only quirky one and faces endless pain humor as his contributions, and you can see we've come a far way from the vibes that this adventure brings.
Because we're invincible!
I never said that!
Following that, we now get an element of the SpongeBob movies that is always a surprise, and with varying rates of success, as the movie becomes more of a musical number. I guess we had it before with Goofy Goober, but here it's really front and center, and just a brilliantly replicable song. Is it rose-tinted glasses to say that this is one of the best SpongeBob songs? Maybe. Suddenly turning more horrendously intimidating characters into just as squishy as the rest of them.
None of the men! They have become our friends!
All the while hopping around genuine perilous planes, but barely acknowledging it. Their obliviousness, again, does make them invincible to a degree. And all this subverted danger only acts to bolster our real enemy, as he has the power to properly interrupt it.
Now that we're
Finally.
As we're coming close to the hour mark, finally now, we meet with Dennis, voiced by Alec Baldwin of all people. Man, I didn't realize how much of a grip this man had on my childhood films, considering he was also the conductor in Thomas the Tank Engine and the Magic Railroad, and he was the villainous boyfriend in The Cat in the Hat. Glad he finally got an amazing movie eventually. I hope he manages to keep that up. Welp.
You mean these?
And just like that, we're back on vulnerable terms. No assistance from Mindy here, huh? No warning, no advice, no pop-up? Oops.
This is what a real mustache looks like.
Incredible. Somehow now turning the overly detailed close-ups into a shot of intimidation, and done not on the protagonists this time. And funnily enough, our protagonists instead do a Deadpool. They try to address the audience as their go-to gag for this section, and I'm not sure about the full history of SpongeBob and the cameraman, but I feel like it's somewhat of a rarity to be this meta in a sense. They turn to look at us on the reveals of the details.
Plankton?
Some reason he wanted me to step on you.
Step on us?
Especially since Patrick is doing it too. Is he some kind of eldritch being that can tell he's on a big movie screen? Or is he just copying SpongeBob? Anyway, whatever the case, whip out your theories another day. After a brief piece of vulnerability from Dennis too about sharing too much information, he brings out his boot. Animated like that hand thing from the show. Very nice. I wonder what the qualifications are for the different aesthetic styles of each element in universe. And just as quickly we get...
This'll only hurt a lot!
Ooh, it's time for live action to claw its way back in, as this is the supposed Cyclops that guards Shell City that we've been hinted at a few times now. It's not a monstrous Cyclops, it's a real human in a hard diving suit. Not that we see their face. An approach I wish we could have had in later movies. And you know, from a visual effects perspective, this really holds up. Sure, it's a little bit cartoony, but surely that's more so what you want. And with this scene being entirely entrenched in greens, it really works to blend the suit into the background better. The shot of him walking away is legitimately just a great blend of animation, and remember, this is 2D animation. It's even harder to mix these two than the CGI stuff. By staying reserved on what is and isn't shown, we have a much better showcase of VFX prowess. It's kind of like the argument of practical effects winning over visually, and I'll admit, I kind of forgot this integration in the movie, but it works so fantastically well. And with that, we've come to a real-life merch store.
Artificially colored rocks?
Now it's a real live-action integration. The entire scene is a live-action background this time, but also still reserved, as Sponge and Pat at least have the confines of a fishbowl to make it a little easier on the animators. And even just addressing this side of marine life is kind of like a Toy Story moment. From an environmentally aware marine biologist, this is a real departure from the vibes of modern SpongeBob, which makes plot lines around cloning and no need for water and all that. Yet here, it keeps things simple, like a throwaway Patrick line, like,
It's some kind of wall of psychic energy.
those days are gone now for the cast, with a line as oblivious as that. But yes, it's a merch store selling dead animals of all kinds, horrifying in its own little way. But you know who's not horrifying? Somehow our biggest villain yet. Tactically choosing to stay in his suit since it looks better that way and animated. Wow, animating like a cartoon character. This is some real Power Rangers tokusatsu vibes. Yet somehow, when you can't see a single cell of skin, it works pretty nicely. He's not a real torturer either. This isn't a full-on fisherman. He's making googly-eyed creations instead. Listen to him do-do-do-do. That being said, here's another joke that I don't think flies that well. I didn't even get it as an adult, let alone as a child.
Alexander Clam Bell!
Honestly, I would have at least expected a niche marine biologist name, not a niche telephone one. Or maybe the education syllabus simply changed between Steven Hillenberg's and my time in school and country. And so, in iconic fashion, the two boys are now placed to cook to death. It's the emotional swell of the movie, and it is really well done. Can you imagine almost crying at a Spongebob movie now? There is nothing even resembling the depths this movie is going for right here, as they lament on their shortcomings, rescind their expectations as men, declare themselves as merely children.
We were doomed from the start.
And only now discover what Shell City even is.
Shell City! Marine gifts and sundries.
And so, in the depths of despair, as everything seems lost and the whole venture itself seems unaccomplishable, the boys learn that they did make it. They did subvert expectations, and they did thrive to even reach this place. Their end goal in the first place.
Dad, we did make it.
And on that bittersweet realization, they can now somewhat die in peace. On their terms.
I'm a goofy goober, yeah.
And I gotta say, this, strangely enough, is probably the real height of voice acting performances in this movie. So many lines are delivered so iconically, but it's here. It's Tom Kenny singing as SpongeBob, dried up and dying, and yet still with some emotionally curveballs in there. That I think cannot be beat even in a great modern SpongeBob movie. He really took the assignment of making it emotional, because I don't know what it is about this delivery, but it's just absolutely perfect. And a death fake out in my SpongeBob movie? Unheard of. This can't be real, can it? Oh, and we're back to the intro Pirates live action now. Something to lighten the air in the middle of this dire ending, both as a way to loop us back succinctly to the beginning, give us some doofy gags of look at these masculine men crying their eyes out, perhaps another notable poke at the whole theme of manhood here, and allow for a slightly less dramatic death scene Deus Ex Machina along the way. I wonder if test screenings didn't have the pirates interrupt here, and so the change was mandatory.
Look! It be the tear of the goofy goobers!
Probably one of the best examples of writing yourself out of a corner. Or maybe that's just the nostalgia talking. But hey, I'm having a good time. And more than just that, it pushes the whole environment further as this revives not just our boys, but brings justice to every single aquatic creature we see in the room. Even the dead things weren't really dead, they were just immobile. Yeah, okay, we'll keep telling the children that one. We got the mariachi band, we got the weird combinations of recognizable faces on unrecognized bodies, and we got the next unabashed flex of animation. I cannot even imagine how long the animators spent on this one shot here, but I can tell you that nobody puts enough respect on a shot like this. Even now, as I show it to you on loop, it is not enough to fully soak in the amount of prowess taking place right here. But it's the perfect beatdown on our hardest rival yet, and with that, the two can get out of here, crown as well.
Let's get this crown back to Bikini Bottom.
But of course, it can't be all dandy from here, as they just as quickly lose that bag of wind Mindy gave them.
That seems simple enough. All right, let's do it for real.
In comes, you know where this is going, an odd choice, a flaw, iconic, that's what it is.
I can take you there.
Yes, for some reason, in this 2005 SpongeBob movie, we get a cameo crossover with Baywatch from 1989. With a technical 15 to 16 year time gap, that would be like if the Sandy Cheeks movie decided to suddenly bring in Colin Morgan from Merlin. To be fair, maybe it would have elevated the movie. Looking into it further, it's not that bad. Hasselhoff was in over 200 episodes of Baywatch, so stuck to it right through to 2003. So he was relevant at the time. Though kid me didn't know that. This was my first exposure to David Hasselhoff. I'd only know his later works like in Hop, America's Got Talent, and a lot of other places where he just plays himself. Honestly, it seems like a dream casting choice. Yourself. Meanwhile, in Bikini Bottom, it's March 14th.
The day that crabs fries.
Just to add a little stakes on the timing of returning. Has it been 6 days? I haven't been counting the nights. Maybe they were unconscious for 3 days in Shell City, I don't know. And just to add more, we're now going to be cutting back and forth between Krabs and SpongeBob. All the more stakes.
Wow! Dennis!
Did you miss me?
And then this guy, coming in nonsensically as well, with bigger boots just steaming on the surface like that. Oh yeah, and also the fact that Hasselhoff himself has become a human speedboat. This kind of tongue-in-cheek humor, I don't think is so prevalent anymore in SpongeBob. It's kind of tragic. They'll put a face in a fish, but like, maybe this is the secret formula ingredients for a grand SpongeBob experience. I mean, they're kind of quirky nowadays with mech heads, but it's, you know, it's not this.
This is the best seat in the house.
Also, for some reason, I feel like this particular frame is ready and set to be another one of those iconic SpongeBob memes. Every frame is just so funny when you pause it for a moment. I'm surprised we haven't done it already. But yes, it's the finale climax time, of course. Everything's all coming to a head at the Krusty Krab 2. Somewhat coming to a head.
I'm stalling.
Yes!
Stalling?
Stalling!
And at the same time, SpongeBob's conducting this final fight scene as if it's a literal parody.
If we run now, we'll never stop.
Like, this is legitimately a subversion of a trope. This movie throughout has had so much parody to it, and I think that is the most notable change from the new stuff. Modern SpongeBob takes itself too seriously, whereas classic SpongeBob actually goes more meta, ironically enough. It tries to elevate its comedy up a level back when it had the gall to do so, all the while bringing genuine creativity like a fight scene across an entire human body. I mean, not that there's too much you can do with it. The twist is you can jump from one leg to another. But even then, Dennis just teleports to the other one anyway. It's never that serious. It's great.
What is this?
That, sir, is $5 goober dollars.
And it makes for a less intimidating final villain. Even with the weather, it's blue skies and blue ocean. It's overall a pretty nice day. Just a fun time watching SpongeBob do his thing, and just as innocently being able to overcome his rival.
Fun at parties.
My eyes!
All to use up the very last piece of the set, David Hasselhoff's feet. It's a cornering, and time for a Deus Ex Machina to end the day. Honestly, it's fine.
See you later, fools!
And with that out of the way, finally, we can say goodbye to that conflict and goodbye to Dennis. Time for the real final conflict.
You are to wait in the carriage until the execution is done.
Mindy's done all the stalling she can. It's the realest deal now. With a nice little flash of the comic strip effect SpongeBob sometimes has and sometimes abandons, it's a countdown sequence to heighten the heights. Back to familiar grounds as another referential piece to the show, I guess, with a little bit of live action integration. We now have our goodbyes to say to David Hasselhoff, the living Deus Ex Machina. But it can't just end off like that. We have to be weird about it, eccentric.
Who said anything about floating?
Initiating launch. 10 seconds to liftoff. 9.
Maybe this as well is what makes SpongeBob of old so good. The ability to be quirky. From the strangely mechanical nature of Hasselhoff's body to switching back to the others as a countdown to Krab's death.
For you!
No!
Yes!
Everyone getting bigger as they repeat themselves. It's simple enough. Kind of a sound bait of its own, but so effective to keep your attention and raising the stakes as we get closer and closer. It's just great directing through and through. No!
Yes!
Ready for our last second savior, and I'm gonna take the time to appreciate even the 2 frames like these ones. Look at how dynamic they draw the lighting on King Neptune as he shoots. Single frame shots, but it's the kind of attention to detail maybe we miss with the simplicities of 3D computer work sometimes. Again, it's just such high quality animation in this movie. The craft is so evident. Anyway, on to the rescue.
Ow.
And looping it back for a cartoon gag on live action too. You don't get to see that too much, so they took the opportunity while they could.
My crown! My beautiful crown!
It's happy days. Mindy can just waltz through the door since the lock was kind of forgotten, and though it's a green day outside now, it's the happy ending. Even adding Krabs celebrating in his frozen ways.
Sorry to rain on your parade, Plankton.
Umbrella!
Umbrella?
Daddy, no!
Daddy, yes!
Oh, that's right, there's another conflict in this movie. Honestly, it's kind of baffling how many antagonists I guess there is. Yet somehow, I don't think this movie feels all that bloated. King Neptune, the car thief, the bubble guy, Dennis, the ice cream monster, the trench monsters, the Cyclops, and now finally Plankton. But it makes sense to reel us back to Plankton. He is the evil core character. And it's been building in the background this whole time.
All hail Plankton! All hail Plankton!
Plankton cheated.
Cheated?
And it's all readying together to bring it back full circle to the core idea at the center of this film. It's not set up to be another fight scene that might get kind of dull and isn't exactly SpongeBob. It's time to go on about maturity, as Plankton doesn't like just using the word cheated.
What, you think this is a game of kickball on the playground?
This is real world drama now, not the infantized version that SpongeBob goes around parading with, and it loops us right back to that idea of...
And you're just a kid!
But SpongeBob has gone through all these events by now, and he's gotten some knowledge along the way. A monologue stored up to bring everything together. The mermaid stuff, the manager position, the stakes, the people. And while legitimate all on its own, it's also willing to subvert some of it again. It's more parody time, as they play around with Plankton getting interrupted or not being able to finish the sentence.
That's right. Okay, Neptune.
And no amount of mermaid or some other third thing.
Because it's also not that important. It's funny to just be happening regardless of words. It's funny to see the reactions and the escalation from SpongeBob's delivery, and the callbacks are nice as well.
A goofball and a wingnut and a knucklehead McSpagatron.
But it's all rising now. It's coming to a single head whether you're listening to the specific words SpongeBob has to say or not, as things get a little weird and eccentric once more before finally hitting off with, of course, yet another iconic bit.
What the scallop?
I'm a goofy goober!
It's a musical ending. We started on a musical and we're ending on a musical. Does it make sense? Does it have to? It's fun through and through, and isn't that the essence of SpongeBob anyway? Somehow, the later films managed to keep the nonsense but forget to make it fun again, if you ask me. But this is just that kid-like wonder, now that SpongeBob has accepted himself as the kid he always was. And it opens up for all the iconic gags along the way. The random live-action shot. The Rock. Humala bebela, zimala bobela, humala bebela, zimile bum. And the fishnets.
And then I say thank you very much.
And it's all just unadulterated fun. And in a little bit of tongue-in-cheek story progress from Plankton that also sounds like a line straight from a parody script.
The Hellmans can't handle this level of rock and roll!
And the day is fully saved. All the iconic characters return, Plankton goes to escape, and we circle back to the moment that started it all. Honestly, that's kinda gross. Maybe the closest thing to actually scary as a kid, but clearly the Plankton voice actor just enjoys that kind of screaming, so it's kind of fun in its own way. Plus, we've been set up to hate him this whole time anyway. And he lives, ready to go into jail anyway. And so, on that final epilogue scene, King Neptune has his crown and is sent to recover Mr. Krabs. Chuck in a mini gag in there.
What the?
Oops. Real boy ending.
And maybe add another one to add the logistics of that song number.
I'm up here.
I'm on it.
I mean, that's just incredible parody work there. Maybe one of my favorite jokes in this movie. And to really end it off, we circle right back to the start issue in the first place. You know how it's supposed to end. It's what we've been waiting for this whole time.
Wait a second, everybody. There's something I need to say first.
You now realize you don't want what you thought you wanted.
I was just gonna tell you that your fly is down.
It's time for another damn parody. This movie knows all the tropes and is happy to dish it all out. It's the real ending.
Manager, this is the greatest day of my life!
Somehow, The meme started here, and we've still got the post-credits to cover. Can you believe it? There's a post-credit scene in a 2005 movie. This is so ahead of its time. Also, yes, in case you didn't know, this Ocean Man song came from an album that legitimately inspired creator Steven Hillenburg to make SpongeBob in the first place. This is where it all sourced from. And you can tell, which is really wholesome to hear. Anyway, those post-credits, eh? Of course, because we haven't come full circle enough, it's back to the pirates who really started it all.
Excuse me, sir? You folks have to leave.
Okay.
Oh my god, even the cinema worker gets a mini character development as she grows some confidence. This movie truly has it all, simultaneously juggling so many elements, introducing us to these characters for the first time with multiple conflicts, an integration of live action and animation, a theatrical runtime, incredible comedy work, and oh so very parodious, and a love letter to the series through and through. Whether you love him, you hate him, or you thought you'd seen enough of him after all of these years and are forever surprised by how far his content can be stretched for a TV show to continue putting him in the front and center of all of Nickelodeon, one way or another, this famous little yellow sponge has been running around on your TV screen for the last 20 years. SpongeBob SquarePants is one of those rare animated icons of television, pulling in massive viewership numbers and a following of people, while still being far more unique compared to any other TV show around it. Starting officially in 1999, SpongeBob has faced many different bumps along the road he calls a career, from this seemingly golden age of his early years despite the lower animation quality, to the shift into digital reinvention and the strain of remaining creative, to the meme resurgence of his popularity thanks to the rise of the internet, and onwards to wherever he is as of right now, still being somewhat noticed by fans across multiple generations. And naturally, with such big attention comes a big spotlight to highlight the absorbent little sod even further. The SpongeBob series has amassed 2 major feature films over the last 2 decades, with a third one coming along very soon. Yes, you may be divided on whether or not modern day SpongeBob is of actual quality, but one unavoidable fact you'll have to face is the fact that the Spongebob movie is coming back. Throwback to 2004, and we come to a pivotal moment in the SpongeBob career path. With the series outlasting several years, talks were coming into place for the franchise to finally come to an end. And though Steven Hillenburg, the marine-loving creator of SpongeBob SquarePants, rejected several prior offers for a full-length film, he finally buckled for the plot of one movie, to be titled by the grand name of The Spongebob Movie. Hey, if it works. This film was also set to be the supposed finale of the SpongeBob series, acting as a neat little spongy knot to tie the world into a simple little ending. Or at least, that was the idea until Nickelodeon ordered more episodes due to its profitable successes. Adding a little more spice to the SpongeBob formula here in 2004, Hillenburg used this film as being his final contribution to the series, as he wished to leave the show as showrunner, instead passing the role along for the foreseeable future going into this new era of SpongeBob. Needless to say, it was a pretty important time in the timeline of SpongeBob's history, and though 7 or 8 year old me didn't know it, in a way, I could kind of feel it. My personal connection to SpongeBob had me hating him and the series when I was very young, to getting worryingly into it as I grew a tad older, though that may have just been through pure exposure and boredom over everything else. Still, by the time the movie came out, I was very much on board with watching it, and it very much felt like the final good SpongeBob episode for a long while. This new era of SpongeBob was noticeable, and though I didn't stay for long because I was less of a fan of this new SpongeBob and this weird thing going on in my real life that I'd rather not talk about in too much detail, I could tell that SpongeBob had changed and I didn't really want to stick around with him any longer. So fast forward to the year 2015, the year of Pluto, same-sex marriage, the dress, and me flying the nest and living at university for the very first time. And SpongeBob, despite having a bit more of a rocky decade of his own, was still standing very much on top with attention and enough backing from Nickelodeon to gun him yet another feature-length film for him to spread his legs with. Not to mention, Hillenburg was still floating around production, taking on an advisory role on TV episodes for a few years now, and helping to write this second film out. This time given an actual title of The Spongebob Movie, A Sponge Out of Water.
Oh, I get it!
Very much running with the newish internet resurgence of SpongeBob's popularity, the movie continued many elements of what we love most about SpongeBob, though shied away from being any kind of direct sequel. And after 10 years, you'd think it'd be overdue by now. So as a now 18 or 19-year-old readying up for life at university, this movie went completely over my head, to the point that I didn't know it existed for at least another 2 years. I was probably too busy working on a million A-levels. So now here we are in 2019, with a third movie on the way. We don't have any trailer footage or specific details to really tell us about the premise of the movie, other than that it's a prequel with a title that makes less and less sense. It's a wonderful sponge? At least with a sponge out of water, like the word like fish, like the lights, but actually the wordplay in the title is just not up to par. Regardless, all we can really gather is it's about SpongeBob. Surprise, surprise from the Spongebob movie. But what we also have at our disposal is two closely related films to this project which we can now judge to help construct our understanding of the direction for this yellow sponge boy. One I have seen and one I haven't. And to add an extra little flair to things, we'll be analysing these two movies simultaneously, comparing pretty much every element to see what did best. Is SpongeBob on the right path of quality, or is my nostalgia telling me that the first one is a goldmine? Or maybe they're both trash. It's time to find out. So interestingly enough, despite being a fully animated TV show, it's become a bit of a theme that the SpongeBob movies must have some live-action segments crammed into their runtime, and both films start off with an IRL pirate adventure. My nostalgia told me that the first film had the usual pirate protagonist, but apparently it's just some dude who looks vaguely similar to the opening theme pirate. And fittingly enough, the first film burst out into the SpongeBob theme song through the pirates singing for SpongeBob in their normal heartily fashion, keeping the action fun and campy as they're excited with the prospect of getting their dirty hands on tickets to see the SpongeBob movie. Whoa, I love it. A Sponge Out of Water, however, takes a slightly different approach, with a single pirate discovering a book telling the story of SpongeBob SquarePants and stealing it for himself. And once he returns to his ship, there's a crowd of CG seagulls who come to pester him, with their voices that they can speak through. And together they enthusiastically sing the theme as the pirate tries to shush them. Also, fun fact, depending on the version of the film you're watching, their voices may play you with the memory of Joe Sugg, Robert Irwin, Nolan North, and Alan Carr as they voice some of these seagulls. This whole forcing the seagulls into the plot felt a little out of place though, and honestly, doesn't seem all that charming either. Seeing all these manly pirates dancing and forcing their way into a cinema screening was a great contrast of character, but singing CG seagulls? Yeah, it's not really there for me. Plus, the beginning of this film is riddled with fart jokes. Quality. Put the two side by side, and I gotta say, one is clearly taking the lead thus far. Now, we're not going to tackle both films chronologically, so next I want to talk about innovation. Something I'm always a fan of when a popular series gets adapted into a new format, be it through a direct sequel or a whole nother feature-length format, is the changes of the world and its scenarios to bring forth something new for the series to chew on. And when it comes to these two films, their approaches couldn't really be too much farther apart from each other. Generally, when it comes to TV to film adaptations, I'd say there are two main options for where to plant the premise of the film, and honestly, it's pretty simple really. Do you treat it like a spin-off to the world, or do you keep it closely within its boundaries? And to make things even more clear-cut, the actual premise of the plot is actually pretty copied and pasted between both films. Both have the major source of conflict be somewhat through the abduction of the Krabby Patty formula, or at the very least some kind of Krabs-Plankton rivalry, and the quest needed in order to retrieve whatever is missing and save the day. So what I mean by the spin-off approach is more in line with what the original SpongeBob movie decided to do to approach this plotline, as it added significant amounts of new content to be covered entirely through the movie's runtime in order to keep the concept of the film fresh and to allow for the creators to have full reign to make whatever the hell they wish. All while keeping in a good chunk of original references to keep it chained into the same SpongeBob world. With its open boundaries, it was free to introduce a new version of King Neptune and this daughter Mindy. It gave us a loophole in boating rules with the Patty Wagon. It introduced a surplus of entirely new worlds and locations, and it opened up more of the lore of the SpongeBob world, as well as a little more of what's going on the surface beyond just simple puppetry animation. For young me, this all worked great to keep me interested and excited to see more of these new scenarios play out. And maybe it could even get some coverage in the main TV series to see it fully realized, or so I wished. And And while clearly a very effective form of adapted storytelling, there is a significantly different way for the premise to be covered as seen by the second movie, which chose to keep its boundaries much closer in order to extend the amount of in-world references available to flaunt, as well as keep the film more in tone with the actual TV series it's based off of, merely extending its wingspan with the help of a larger budget and time emphasis. This approach still allows for room for some innovative ideas, but at its core makes the film feel more like one largely extended episode, which, considering the popularity and success of the SpongeBob idea as a whole, certainly isn't a bad idea to go with. Using this approach, our main characters are forced to stay in those famously recognizable locations for much longer, allowing for far more references to be put into place, be it through long-forgotten character cameos, screen time, and dialogue options to help balance against the gigantic cast of the SpongeBob world, or to simply feel a closer connection to the world of SpongeBob through its more intense coverage and reaction to the events going on around it. It's less of a distant background event as it is in the first movie. Now, unless your favourite character is Smitty Werbenman Jensen, chances are your favourite character will be making some sort of appearance in the plot, and the film as a whole, even if it's just at the ending. Now, technically, I shouldn't really be putting these two comparisons head to head, as they're simply both effective yet different formats for the film, but I must admit, both have substantial amounts of benefits. In the newer film, I did enjoy seeing a whole lot more of Sandy Cheeks and Gary the Snail, and how each character responded differently to the crisis going on around them, whilst the variety of new concepts introduced in the original film still felt investing, as if it was a whole new chapter of SpongeBob, fitting considering it was the planned end. But at the end of the day, I still feel like I personally would place the original ahead of the second here too, for a couple of reasons. For a start, I feel the imaginative new stuff far outweighs the referential old stuff shown off in the second film. And secondly, I feel the intense focus on staying in Bikini Bottom for so long, and especially the Krusty Krab, when we know all along that the characters are gonna end up all CG'd up and on the surface, just ended up overstaying its welcome and felt like a slow crawl to get to the part we're actually looking forward to. The original film is always moving forwards, and so there's never really a point of getting distracted or bored upon watching. But hey, that could just be me. Still, different is different, you know? And what could highlight the difference between a decade better than the jokes? Oh boy, the jokes. Nothing dates a film more prominently than some of the jokes they tell, and though you'd think I'm talking about the 2004 version, I'm actually talking about A Sponge Out of Water, cause it puts in some seriously date-heavy references. SpongeBob is timeless, right? Animation of all things never ages, and with a series as long as SpongeBob, there's sure to be all sorts of content and memories that can be brought back up and feel like not a day has gone by since the last time we saw them. But you know what does kinda age, despite being the same animated concept over and over? Memes. Yes, you heard me right. There are memes in this movie. Obviously, with this film releasing in 2015, the internet had long taken off, and meme culture had swallowed us all whole by this point. And with it came a seemingly endless wave of SpongeBob memes. You know the one, they've been popping up all video probably. And though this SpongeBob movie did try to keep things fairly subtle, not letting them get in the way of the actual plot or anything, it did sneak one in right at the end of the film. During the end credits, no less. And I feel no matter how they could have handled it, it still just feels like it's like your mum trying to act cool in front of you, rather than being a particularly good joke or reference. Especially when ham-fisted in and outright named right beforehand. Here's the meme for you in case you haven't seen it.
You know what this needs? A little interpretive dance.
And it really doesn't sit well with me. Of all people, why would you pick a Squidward meme and the one least likely to fall for this internet crap? And done in such an unsubtle way that it really just feels too forced to be genuine comedy. But then again, I'm sure many kids would have loved this reference just from being something external that they recognize, you know? Now, obviously in 2004, memes weren't really a thing, so that kind of content is impossible to make an appearance apart from the stuff that originated here. But even still, with it being a different decade, there is a dynamically large difference in how the script for the original film laid out its jokes. And honestly, I don't see them doing too great either. No, really. While it's more common these days for elements of comedy to be placed more directly in the dialogue of the characters in whatever which scene, back in 2004 with a particularly animated format pushed the original to show off more visual slapstick comedy as was the standard for SpongeBob's comedy as a whole. It's kind of what you'd expect from a kids show like SpongeBob, simply being strange to look at for kids and adults alike and being so unusual that it's somewhat humorous through its insanity. But at the same time, when looking through pretty much all of these jokes throughout the movie, I find them not actually all that funny. Sure, they're memorable and I can quote them all day, but nothing really made me laugh. Watching the Spongebob movie at most gave me 90 minutes of breathing out of my nose on occasion. That's its peaking reaction. And that's not to say that it's the only form of the original movie's jokes. There's plenty of in-dialogue ones that are okay, I guess, and funny moments that can get a huh out of me at most, but beyond that, there's really no laugh-out-loud jokes in this entire movie, only references that are fun to witness. Now contrast that with the newer movie, and I know I already covered the crappy meme at the end, but actually, when watching the real jokes in the movie, they're surprisingly good. And even better than just being a lol random joke, a lot of them fit really nicely into the world of SpongeBob, exploring creative ways to play with the iconic character traits that we know. Like Plankton being tortured through SpongeBob's incessant laughing, or the literal food fight having the same orders from General Krabs and Sandy Cheeks as a customer, giving us the visual gag of holding the mayo. It had surprisingly innovative ideas for a 2-decade-old gimmick. Or even just the sly meta jokes about the surrounding context, they're good. And then there's the crappy ones, like Patrick talking to his own butt, or that snail chase that we've all seen before. Still though, when directly comparing the two movies in regards to jokes, overall, the original movie keeps a more consistent rate of with memorable moments, but nothing hysterical, whilst Sponge Out of Water has some genuinely smart humor that sometimes really hits, and sometimes really misses. It plays with established concepts better because of its structured layout, making it have both the best and the worst jokes. But for me personally, I gotta say, the second one is just flat out funnier. The comedy feels smart, it hosts weight and isn't just funny characters doing funny things. Joke-wise, it's simply the superior movie. I guess that's modern filmmaking for you. The best thing the first movie has is its aftermath of Gooby Gooba Rock. That's my favorite, you know, SpongeBob up high and Patrick still in leggings. Mwah, beautiful. Alright, let's finally talk story and the character exploration we see along the way. I've already rambled long enough about the different structural approaches to the two films, but now let's talk about how they actually fit into the story of each of the films. From story beat zero, both films tackle the idea of the Krabby Patty formula being stolen, however dip the premise in two entirely different contexts. With the original surrounding the opening of the second Krusty Krab and King Neptune's crown being stolen and framed onto Mr. Krabs so that Plankton can steal it from him. Meanwhile, the second film heats with the standard attack story with a creative flair and leads into a mystery heaped in realistic character responses. Both are great openers to the film and showcase quite nicely the general tone and themes attached to each of the films. With SpongeBob being rejected at the start of the first movie due to his immaturity, which will soon become a running theme he has to battle with across the film, whilst the meddling of a third party in the second film and the reveal that Plankton isn't the big baddie behind it all thrusts more of the idea of seeing his perspective on the world and the development of his actions further. Now it's here that there's a bit more of a divide in what I would argue is really effective, as both films have their final arc piece lead them to the surface. Spoilers, that's where both the crown and the Krabby Patty formula have been hoisted away. However, one film has a more refined manner of reaching that destination. The second film, as Sponge Out of Water, you know, the one named after the act of being on the surface, the one that almost had all of its marketing pushing the CGI gimmick of the final act of the film taking place in the real world, yeah? That second film. The SpongeBob SquarePants Movie 2 film, yeah? Well, that film doesn't actually reach the surface. You know, where all the trailers were showcasing scenes and sneak peeks towards, that one. It's not reached until 1 hour into the hour-and-a-half long film. And no matter what way you squeeze it, that's bad pacing at its best and false advertising at its worst. And you can really feel it. Knowing the context of where the film ends up, the first 2/3 of this movie really drag on, and the resolution is found in a really unappealing way whereby SpongeBob and Krabs, at the last minute, smell the Krabby Patties from miles and miles and miles away. A stretch of a plot device to get it moving, right? Now, the first movie gets to the surface in a similar time too, at about 54 minutes in, and yet the pacing is not nearly an issue here, as it came through a natural progression of the story as SpongeBob and Patrick set out on an individual adventure which had initially started at the 30-minute mark, very much making the film feel like it was moving forward rather than repeating itself over the same scenes like the second film did, kind of like a loop that felt like it wasn't going anywhere. Another point that really didn't settle well with me was the integration of the surface with the second movie. So from all those trailers, we know that SpongeBob and friends are gonna be turned into CG characters, but how does that exactly work, and how are they supposed to breathe up there? Well, the movie covers it by using a very long-winded Deus Ex Machina, whereby a galaxy-overseeing dolphin comes to their rescue and uses magic. And though it's technically not a Deus Ex Machina, since it is established earlier on in a seemingly random plot sequence, it still feels a little out of left field and simply doesn't sit right with me. But in all fairness, the exact same sense came across in the original when SpongeBob magically gains the powers to save all Helmet residents with the power of bursting into rock and accepting his childlike manner. Though at least in that case, it's somewhat rooted in the theme of being a kid. I don't know. SpongeBob movies are goofy, and one way or another you just gotta go with it, I guess. Still, once the surface arc is reached in both films, however contrived, both films have entirely different final arcs, with the original movie having SpongeBob succeed and simply struggle to get back home, whilst the second movie has SpongeBob continue the quest with a final fight against live-action pirate Burger Beard, which I shamefully didn't realise at first. And really, both are pretty fun. It's nice to finally see the characters in their CG forms after all that marketing, and it's cool to see how the logic of the surface works in the first film. By this point, both are enjoyable in their own little ways, though the overacting in the second movie is much more refined than the first, because in the first one it just looks really odd. The first film also has the weird crux moment of throwing in a Baywatch reference in the form of David Hasselhoff to date the film and entertain the audience in the room, I guess. It's very strange and plot devicey, but it also expands to be quite fun with how unrealistic they made his swimming, and it all made for a perfect little arena to fight Dennis for the first time, which was strangely investing to see. Overall, a really good and gripping last chunk. And as for the sequel, yeah, that's fun too. I liked seeing how each character responded to the beach and the confrontations of Burger Beard, though the plot did get a little muddled as the characters were teleported away to some random island with a pun name and then teleported back. But after that, the actual fight scene with everyone's favourite characters was cool to see reimagined again, like an old SpongeBob episode. Though the actual chase of the ship I remember losing attention to. Maybe it got a little too generic car chasey to me, I don't know. Still, one way or another, the day is saved. All is brought back to normal, and the daily life of SpongeBob and friends goes back to being normal. Be it through foiling Plankton's plans, through the power of rock and roll, or by returning the secret formula and Plankton just playing into his role again. Overall, both have their pros and cons, with the sequel showing off more of their characters and giving us a cool meta plotline with some nice connections to the surface world, whilst the original introduces cool concepts, memorable moments, and a nice theming of maturity across SpongeBob and a little bit of Patrick. So the surprise YouTube cameo appearance in the second film from Nice Peter and Epic Lloyd was a surprise to see. And then there's the forced rap battle at the end. You know what, let's move on to that as an actual final little point. The songs. These SpongeBob movies aren't musicals, but they always seem to have a musical number or two snuck in there. We've already spoken about the opening theme song in both, so I won't bore you with that one again, but instead let's compare the next two songs back to back. At the halfway mark of the original movie, SpongeBob and Patrick survive the monsters of a deadly trench through the power of song and their false sense of security as mature men. This is a fantastic tune and one that perfectly gets into your brain on repeat. And the visuals are pretty nice too, as it's connected to the action and tells a campy little hero story instead of what could potentially be a really horrifying sequence. And the concept of not being eaten because of music is just another funny nose moment to see. Compare that to the sequel song, Teamwork. SpongeBob and Plankton are coming to terms with working together, and it feels more like an actual music number, but with talk singing, and it's just not memorable, and the visuals aren't very interesting considering they're just standing talking to each other. Like, it gets the story going forward somewhat, but it's just not a fun song. Maybe it doesn't count, but to me, it just felt like a step backwards for the whole film. Plus, it was almost too recognizable. This movie segment feels like a repeat of old episodes, with this bit just being a crappier version of the fun song chucked onto the plot of In almost every way, it just seems to fall flat. And then there's the second song in each movie, the finale song. The original had the iconic whilst the second film has, get this, a full epic rap battle of history segment between the new characters of the movie. One gets a giant Deus Ex Machina for SpongeBob saving the day, and the other is one big old reference for the audience members who get it. But even then, I still don't think it's all that good. And part of the thing I like so much about other epic rap battle songs is that the two combatants are related somehow. Spartan versus Spartan, spy versus spy, fictional lovers versus... you get it. The connection between the overseeing dolphin and the seagulls is that they're both in the Spongebob movie. And they're talking animals. But so is the entire cast. To me, it just felt a little too much. The cameo in the live action segments weren't too bad, but throwing in this entire rap didn't really impress me. Maybe people were going crazy in this moment, and it's memorable in its own way. Whatever it is, when it comes to songs, pretty much across the board, I've still got to give it to the original because those songs are still making an impact on us after all these years. The only impressive part in the sequel is the fact that YouTubers made it far enough to get into this movie. So with all that talk about structure, creativity, jokes, story, and songs, what could be said about the two films overall, and what does this mean for the upcoming third movie? But I gotta stay firm on my idea that the original film is still the superior movie. The things it explores and the way it portrays them is just an absolute win to me, even if I am to admit that the sequel is a funnier film with better jokes. The original is a fun joy to witness all the way through, whilst the sequel has the strongest laughs and the lowest lows, and I'd only really want to watch the CG part again, skipping the whole first hour of the film. And that tells me the film ain't so great. This is the terrible SpongeBob Movie 3. Why did they make a third one? Coming fresh off the news of Steven Hillenburg's passing, Nickelodeon went ahead and created their backup plan of staying relevant by going all in on SpongeBob. It's not the character who died, just the soul of the franchise instead. Oh, there's gonna be more of these? God help us all. So the movie begins with us slowly entering the realm of Bikini Bottom, now with a new slicker paint to really get those modern kids paying attention. 2D is for boomers, showing us the normal daily lives of our favorite characters. Well, the main characters, and for the first 9 minutes, it's basically just all those basic traits put back to back.
Good morning, Patrick!
Good morning, SpongeBob!
Seen it.
Great. Another evil plan.
Seen it. Seen it.
What the f is this?
Seen it? I don't know when the inciting incident was, but we really all grew up to be a Squidward, huh?
Another day, another migraine.
Later.
Another day, another migraine.
Anyway, some nice details in this sequence are the use of the Goofy Goober party boat, a rare appearance for the main show that started from the first movie, as well as Patrick being on some kind of register, if this is a regular thing. Anyway, the plot really begins when Sandy comes in with her new invention, Aquafina.
My name is Otto. How may I serve you?
And pitches it to Mr. Krabs to revolutionize his business.
You have 60 seconds.
Okay, so get this, right? We take the Super Mario franchise, right? Iconically beloved, and then we just cram Chris Pratt inside of it, you know? Everybody will love it. There's no controversies to be had there. And we'll have it be made by the same guys who made the Minions.
Ah, Jesus, I hate these things!
So you don't like the idea, or... By the way, this is meant to be like SpongeBob's tie. It's not anything else. Sandy's Aquafina invention, Otto, promises to automate Mr. Krabs' work so he'll never have to do anything again.
I'll take it and nurture it, and I will love Otto like he was me own son.
Thank you, Daddy.
Though she's quickly binned after trying to fire Mr. Krabs himself, bringing them over to Plankton and his robot wife, who are scheming as usual, pinpointing that SpongeBob is the source of all their problems and having opportunity land in their laps. Also, they specifically mention that Plankton has attempted to grab the formula 3,087 times, and SpongeBob has worked here for 8 years, so doing the maths on that, yeah, it adds up. Cool. So the next scene is SpongeBob at night cleaning up the kitchen, doing so in his spongy ways. Room for some creative animations, but it's still not that original. Exploding water like in the intro, saying goodbye to each item, seen that before. There's really only 2 new things I can spot. Licking the screen, I like that, and... this the best they could come up with? It's like the franchise's biggest enemy is the fact that it itself has become so big. It's done everything already. It's like the writers are running out of room to do more. That explains the spin-offs. Anyway, Plankton sneaks in with his heist. Has a nice classic moment of reaching for that formula, uses the wet floor sign, that's some nice consistency, and loses. Bring in the new character.
Yo, what's up, sire?
Not him, him.
It is! It's a wrinkle! I look like an old avocado that's been left and forgotten in the fridge!
Another King Neptune? No, this is King Poseidon. What's the difference? Well, I guess somewhere in the background, the entire SpongeBob Foundation has transitioned to another line of mythology, as Neptune comes from Roman mythology, and Poseidon is Greek, though they're essentially the same in domain and trident. What an odd change. And they also have appearance insecurities. He needs a snail for his skincare routine. And that's the plot. Time to cue that one episode we've already seen before.
Gary! Where are you? Come on, Miss Tuftsy. There's plenty more fun to be had.
All leading us to the most soulless corporate shilling moment, the tie-in to Camp Coral. See, now, the entire backstory has the SpongeBob universe being entirely rewritten. None of the characters met in the present as adults shown in early TV episodes. Now, SpongeBob is given a full childhood experience where he met everybody. And the idea of doing a sequel to SpongeBob is precisely against the wishes of creator Steven Hillenburg. He was literally the opposing factor that stopped Nickelodeon from doing so earlier. But he's dead now. So here we are. How did they meet? They just did on a rock one day. And that's the scene over. Worth it. Worth it. What follows next is a really drawn out 3 minutes of SpongeBob and Patrick discussing what to do. Get Gary was the conclusion there. But I do like that they brought back the more physical humor of the Sponge's tear physics from the first movie. The rest is pretty standard though. And right on cue, Plankton sends the boys off in an automated boat. The adventure begins, with them immediately arguing over nothing.
Stop the car!
Stop the car!
Well, at least they're speed running the cliches. At the Krusty Krab, everyone protests with SpongeBob not working.
We get the fuck out of here!
And now, SpongeBob is in the desert, on the surface. It's the live-action portion of the movie. For some reason.
I am a simple tumbleweed. Call me Sage.
Oh, it's to shoehorn in celebrities. Classy. Where are my legs? See, in the first movie, I kind of felt like it works with David Hasselhoff. He's coming off of a Baywatch reference, so he's in tune with the ocean. But decapitating Keanu Reeves to stuff him in a plant just seems a little forced. It then just spirals out more as the two enter a saloon with...
Boss dog, even when I'm on, I'm off, y'all.
Huh?
Bring the prisoners to my office!
What? Only a couple more needed and we've reunited the Spy Kids cast. And this whole B-plot is about saving the souls of these zombie ghosts, accidentally killing their leader with the sunlight, and then that's what frees them.
Thank you, SpongeBob.
We're finally free!
Huh?
I agree, SpongeBob. Then they're chased by the tornado version of El Diablo Daddy Trejo, and then they wake up. Oh, except Keanu is real, and he gives them a window to see Gary live, to tell them to... I don't actually think this really motivates anything, other than to voice how outdated these writers seem to be.
It's not a video chat app like Skype or FaceTime or anything.
Skype? It's 2020 when this came out. Anyway, Mr. Krabs has now given up without his boy SpongeBob. So depressed that winning doesn't even feel like a victory to Plankton.
You're giving up?
Leave me alone, you asshole. I'm not going anywhere.
Hey, it's time for the casino montage in the lost city of Sin City, Atlantis City, playing alongside Living La Vida Loca. Because in more outdated fashion, we're going back to 2004 and the Shrek 2 vibes. Oh, but this is a modern twist. It cuts sometimes.
Wow.
Is this gonna be a new thing in movies to get that TikTok vibe? Somehow, I feel like I could see it. Anyway, it's the two going stir-crazy gambling, keeping up with the adult activity in kids' cartoons and especially Spongebob movies for some reason. Though it's still pretty basic in execution, as is the hangover scene afterwards. With Sage complaining at such harsh angles, I'm pretty sure his footage has been physically turned to match the eyeline. But then, they're at their destination, and after a couple of pretty boring jokes...
Oh sure, let me check. 2 rubes to see Poseidon... No.
Hey dude, where the blue thing grew? Of course.
We end up on stage before His Majesty Poseidon. Get comfy, because we're basically gonna stay here for the final 40 minutes of the film. But this first scene here doesn't really do much. One child's game, a run to Poseidon, a pull and tug sequence, and that's it. So, because there's still the other half of the cast back at Bikini Bottom to deal with. And I've got another pitch for you. Movie video games. We're now uploading these every Friday on DazzReviews 2 and streaming them earlier on our Twitch. We are now streaming every other day this kind of content, so come on over. Or subscribe if you haven't already. Please check. You know, these things happen. Finally, Sandy Cheeks makes her second ever appearance, noticing SpongeBob is missing and rounding up the others to chase after them.
I hate to admit it, but things just aren't the same without him.
Because SpongeBob and Patrick are going to be getting a public execution.
Excuse me, can I tag along?
What the f are you doing here?
Ah, yes, and Plankton comes along as well. Why?
We'll hear about it in the car. Mr. Squidward!
We won't, really. As for that car, it's the OG one from the first movie, but now with a subway-style extension. I like it, not gonna lie. This next prison scene, I don't. It's just another stupid breakup scene. Oh, but they flash back twice to reveal who's the real issue. At least one joke was executed well.
I'm out of here!
And now that was all the time we needed for everyone to come together. Just completely skim over anything with the secondary cast. I'm sure they'll get some worthy screen time later. It's time for the execution show, in which Sandy completely derails it.
But sire, a strong defense makes for a better show. Isn't that right, audience?
Oh, okay. I really wanted to see an execution, though.
I'll allow it.
So what is this giant defense, then? Is it the kind we've seen in pretty much every kid's cartoon that covers this plot trope? You know, the one that's all about how the defendant is really a good person, how they've always been there for them.
Even going all the way back to summer camp.
No, they're just going to tie back into Camp Coral again. No, I don't want to be him. No. Yep, it's all just one big retconned origin story. Now they met as kids, not as a lasso explosion monster. And the scene has them punching each other and laughing. That's it.
So, please, don't hurt him.
Oh, but the show's not over yet. Patrick's gonna monologue now.
Well, in this sea star's opinion, those laws should be broken.
Oh, wow, this starfish is really getting dramatic.
I was just a lonely bump on a log when I first met him.
Oh, what, another spin-off plug? Are you kidding? What? No, wait, So, why did these two meet in this land of broken promises? SpongeBob offered jellyfish to him because he was crying once. Revolutionary.
And things haven't changed that much today, Your Honor.
You're telling me. Yes, because if you haven't picked up already, we're going to be going through 5 retconned Camp Coral backstories, which really don't need to be crammed into this movie. We get where the plot goes from here anyway. Alas.
I don't like SpongeBob. Whoa! Anyway, I too met this nabob in
End my
I
suffering.
remember it like it was yesterday.
In this reality, there's a whole talent show arc where Squidward lost and... Do we care? Is this needed? Can we skip these? Mr. Krabs also has a story to tell.
But I won't.
Oh, good.
Might even speak about how he inspired me when I was just
Oh,
a
come
small-time
on.
vendor with... But I won't.
Heck, I'd probably mention how he encouraged me to start up my own restaurant.
You should open up your own restaurant.
The real secret formula is sitting right here.
Maestro?
There you then.
A formula is something like a recipe.
What is this? Why is this a musical now? The reason this worked in the first film is because they had like 5 different songs. I have forgotten them, but they're there. God, this really is just like the substance of one episode extended into a film. Anyway, that whole sequence of corporate origin stories was about 15 minutes long. Awful. But it was all a ploy to steal Gary and go on the run. Time for our creative fight scene. What's that SpongeBob slapstick humor gonna do this time? Apparently, fighting Power Ranger style in a suit of armor. Not bad. Classic. You know what joke I really like?
Do you think we should have stayed in there with Squidward?
What? When did that? Oh, way to ruin it, guys. And with Squidward weak by himself, he burns and falls out the building. Rest in peace, him and his FNAF scream. God, this film sure gets distracted a lot.
Yo, what's up? Oh! I have a gambling problem.
Yeah. Woo! Good joke. Yeah. I love it. More. It's the final escape. Failed. Immediately.
Leaving so soon, kids?
Instead, it's the final confrontation. King Poseidon decrees they can all go free as long as they return the snail. But of course, that's not a happy ending at all. At least the death stakes are gone.
SpongeBob.
Sage? Is that you?
Hello.
Hello? This is a 2020 movie, so I guess if Keanu can just Zoom call in, I assume that means I should be able to too, right? Seriously, it's impressive how bad they were able to make this whole thing just look. So what's the final answer? Courage. Courage to say no and promptly get executed. In actuality, it's a wholesome message about friends and how Poseidon doesn't have any.
I have buddies, I have besties, I have home slices.
Yeah. And that doesn't put him on a murdering rampage, it makes him sad.
I don't have any friends.
Readying for SpongeBob to be his only friend.
But friends don't kidnap friends' pet snails.
Oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. And so, Poseidon gives up his desires to look absolutely perfect, everyone is happier, the snails are freed, and life returns to normal. Just Bikini Bottom adopted all the snails. And there's no reference to SpongeBob actually keeping his promise of being a friend to Poseidon. Wholesome! And all to the beat of a cover of Take On Me. Did they turn SpongeBob into a snail at the end? They really did desecrate the original vision, huh? I think that's enough of that. Yeah. It was a tie. It was a tie. It was supposed to be like a SpongeBob. It was. You know what the worst part of all this is? The animation is actually pretty stellar. It looks nice and appealing. It's a great visual adaptation, and I love the homages to stop motion animation in some of the minor details where it's animated on 2s. But this film is just dreadful. The jokes are more slapstick a la the grand original movie, and it has the general vibe of SpongeBob, but just soulless in execution. Mr. Krabs' footsteps just don't do it for me anymore. Something's off.
Q.
Sorry. But as usual, some jokes shine through. SpongeBob muttering about curtain rail logistics.
Once the rod goes, you're probably better off getting a whole new set of curtains.
And Patrick's 7 mistake seems like a classic quote to me.
Just put it on L.
Patrick, that's not an L, that's a 7.
7 starts with an L.
But I don't like the little addition at the end.
Oh, it's weird.
Dunno, just feels like too much. But overall, It's one big marketing ploy to force feed the idea of that Camp Coral spin-off. And it's not that a spin-off can't be done tastefully. I'm happy to hear that The Patrick Show has added some new spice to the franchise without having to retcon ideas or spit on Hillenburg's wishes. But this is still the embodiment of basic. The celebrity additions crass, the originality lacking, so much repeated or just naff and poorly executed across the board. This movie isn't a classic. It's just another result of the mass-producing corporate machine. But you don't need me to tell you that. Can't wait for the next one. Wait, what? They're actually making another one? And 3 more movies based on spin-offs? Well, we'll get to that when we get to that then. This movie didn't even have the sponge on the run that much. I counted 3.5 minutes max.
Here you go, sir. A king-size
Soulless SpongeBob Netflix movie.
on a stick.
Thanks.
They're sickening.
The terrible Sandy Cheeks movie. Let's do a deep dive into this, shall we? SpongeBob is a property that is very much getting run into the ground at this point. I don't mean that's a secret by any stretch. And to be fair, I haven't watched much of the new cartoons. Maybe they're okay. However, what I can safely say, from experience that I have directly witnessed, the movies are just a massive load of tartar sauce. With each installment, they just seem to be getting worse. And let me tell you, this year's The Sandy Cheeks movie is us hitting bikini rock bottom. I really thought the worst one being a backdoor pilot for Nickelodeon's Muppet Baby ripoff Camp Coral was going to be the low point. But no, I was wrong. This is the new low point. The other movies at least still felt like SpongeBob. This movie completely abandons the style of humor that made this thing a success in the first place. Even before its release, the marketing choices alone were bizarre. Like, do you remember this? Did you see any of these posters? As like most terrible movies, this was releasing on Netflix, and thus they gifted the world with these tie-in posters. I mean, I know this is meant to be a pastiche of Love is Blind, but it kinda looks like SpongeBob's on Naked Attraction at this point. Which leads me on to the other thing. They really tried to take emphasis off of Sandy in promoting this Sandy Cheeks movie. This character's had a rough ride, I tell you. In the original SpongeBob movie, she's completely sidelined with only 2 lines in the whole movie.
I don't need to.
And then, a full 20 years later, she finally gets her own movie and they completely retitle it. Notice the huge saving bikini bottom, complete with tiny subheading, The Sandy Cheeks Movie. Ouch. Add in the fact that in all of these posters, SpongeBob has equal billing in the marketing of her own movie, and it's just not a great time to be the show's only principal female character.
This is a load of barnacles.
Yes!
I mean, I get the logic that attaching the main character can help boost the movie, but then in that case, what was the point in even making a solo Sandy Cheeks movie? Well, as we'll soon get into the film itself chronologically, we will come to learn there wasn't any point. We open with SpongeBob in a lab. Oh, sorry, that's just the Nickelodeon Movies logo. Doesn't hold a candle to... Anyway, we actually open with the classic SpongeBob establishing shot of Bikini Bottom, which visually looks pretty great in 3D animation. Initially, it looks like the interesting animation from Sponge on the Run is in fact back, i.e. the only part of that movie I actually liked, but then...
Good morning, Bikini Bottom!
Oh God, is she gonna be that loud for the whole movie? Regardless, we quickly discover the character animation is in fact not the same animation at all. It's definitely hoping that you buy into it as an extension of that animation. It's not. The budget has definitively declined for this one, which, when we get into the scale of this movie's story, it's gonna become a bit of an issue. We continue with another robot invention, like the Aquafina one she had in the last movie. Makes sense, we know she invents stuff, that's like the entire character. And then we get into what initially looks like a throwback to When I Lived in Texas song.
Well...
Oh, no. Unfortunately not. This is more of a quickly set up the character song, but in more of a way that a kid's sticker book would summarize her, as opposed to any more emotional insight, which would be welcome when she's the main character for this. All the characters joining in too, it's all very preschool. Is this another Camp Coral tie-in or something? In the cartoon, there is a precedent for song numbers that are deliberately corny or lame with a bit of tongue-in-cheek. However, usually you have both the zany animation and tone of the show on your side. This doesn't have that sense of irony. It's a bad song, and there's nothing much to it. feels more like a theme song for a Sandy spin-off show on Nick Jr. And sadly, I think this is probably the approach to the SpongeBob IP in general nowadays.
You have my heart.
Anyway, the song stops and then... Wow, we're 4 minutes in and with only a song telling us about Sandy, and Bikini Bottom's immediately taken away.
What's happening?
They're really blasting through this one. I'm all for going against what people expect from how a story's put together. It's not like 10 minutes of the status quo is an obligation. However, I feel like this just skips a whole chunk of movie that they just couldn't be bothered with. Sure, most people watching this have seen SpongeBob, so understand the world and characters, but when you're making a side character the protagonist, it'd be nice to just see a slice of her life to get kind of a character arc going, you know? You can't just do a song that goes, "Hi, I'm Sandy and I like science," and then go straight to, "Oh no, the entire city is being pulled out of the ground." As I always say, even when you're making this for kids, they deserve better storytelling. Plus, this does nothing to keep the older fans who have kids invested either. We also see that SpongeBob has now gone from regular idiot to super idiot. I guess that's just what they do when Patrick's out of the picture. Just give him all the stupid stuff instead. I wouldn't be surprised if initially it was Sandy and Patrick before executives were like, no one's watching this if the sponge isn't in it. You could airlift a lot of SpongeBob's lines, give them to Patrick, and it would still make perfect sense. It would certainly make things clearer that this is a Sandy Cheeks movie. I know SpongeBob is allowed stupid moments, but he's kind of next level just from this opening scene. I still can't believe I'm even calling this the opening scene. Just a quick musical number to say hi and off we go! The classic Texas episode gives us more character investment in her in 6 minutes than this does across an entire feature film.
It's Sandy.
I wanna wake up in Texas.
In other words, it doesn't take long to do. Maybe re-establishing that arc with a quick scene or even just a quick gag would have been good. Classic SpongeBob shenanigans, you know? Already, you can see why saving Bikini Bottom became the main header. Sandy Cheeks will be diluted as much as possible.
My leg!
Really had to shoot that one in early doors, didn't they?
My other leg!
Give them time, and I bet they'll get every token SpongeBob joke in at this point. I mean, I guess it's classic shenanigans, but I was hoping for more than just references. I wanted vibes. All the panicking from the characters has a weirdly awkward execution here as well.
Don't panic, anyone! Does Patrick have gas again?
It all sounds kind of off, you know? There's a sort of insincerity to it all. And as the whole town gets lifted away, this is what SpongeBob has to say on the matter.
Streaming videos on demand. I can't demand them anymore.
I guess this is the tier of jokes we're sticking with. And he absolutely has a tantrum over specifically that point. Tears spurting and everything. Remember when SpongeBob's humor had an otherworldly quality with next to no pop culture references? I don't know what the show's up to nowadays, but this was a thing in the last movie as well. Anyway, cue more tier-based cartoon antics that probably would have come across funnier in the normal animation style.
Come on, SpongeBob, you're coming with me.
Wow, they're really just getting on with this, aren't they? No time to take that in for a second. They jump on a volcanic geyser that turns up where Bikini Bottom was. Convenient. To be fair, we've had so many long journeys to get anywhere in these movies, I can see why the change of pace was needed.
Enough! You both are barnacles on me brain!
Although don't worry, like what feels like with every other SpongeBob movie, this does eventually descend into a road trip. In case you thought an original story idea was ever turning up. Now, once again, we're going with the premise that something's been taken and it's time for SpongeBob and another character to go and save it. Formula to a T. Also, you'll soon learn that SpongeBob making all these random hyperactive noises over Sandy happens throughout the entire movie. He is absolutely insufferable in this at times. There will be dialogue going on, and he's just sort of making these noises over it. The writers have no idea what to do with him. Yeah, Sandy's just Iron Man now.
I am Iron Man.
I don't really have an issue with this. It's an interesting thing to do with her diving suit, really. She even has a hologram writing thing. Nice to see the 14 hours later time card pop up too. There's at least some SpongeBob personality in this.
14 hours later.
And actually, I really like the gag where the view of the land from the plane is a map. Also, yeah, they're in the surface world full-time now. This really should have been the movie called Sponge Out of Water in hindsight. And then we have a cut back to the kidnapped Bikini Bottom.
Go home, you pointy pinky razor head!
Okay. At times, it feels like they just don't have a handle on the chaotic side of SpongeBob humor. Like, the writers are legitimately just winging it more than I've ever seen before. This is like a breakdown on the big screen, but it's been shoved over to Netflix instead. And now, oh look, live action characters. Including that guy who turns up as the same gormless character in everything. I'm calling him out now, whether it's Stranger Things, Free Guy, or even Fallout this year. He is always there. You know your career options are narrow when even your Wikipedia page says he is usually typecast as nerds or individuals with socially awkward traits illustrating American quiche culture. I haven't made that up. That's literally what it says when you Google him. Matty Carterople's the name, by the way. I'm gonna remember Matty now. Not by choice, but by sheer exposure. Anyway, it's here we discover Bikini Bottom is a laboratory, which honestly is a great premise for a SpongeBob movie that's wasted on a Netflix film that they didn't make a big deal about, nor is it very well made, alas this video, but this is legitimately solid escalation for the movies, now bringing the characters into the real world in an interesting way that should feel like higher stakes, except it all takes place in this one room with 3 principal human characters, so it doesn't. As becomes more apparent as we go on.
Stop using my DVD drive to heat toaster pastries.
These lab scenes feel more like they've been filmed on the set of a kids' science TV show, with super basic camera work to match. For a show that's made its name on gags that use super intense shots and angles, there is absolutely no attempt in matching that with how this show has been filmed. Honestly, this is a thing that I can only describe as Paramount in tone, because the Knuckles series is also done by Paramount and has some of that same acting style.
You gonna rescue him?
He must learn to rescue himself.
It's like somehow the fingerprint of this terrible kids studio bleeds into the performance of what would otherwise be pretty successful actors. Yes, I'm looking at you, Matty. You may only have one joke, but it's been enjoyed a few times.
SpongeBob and Sandy Cheeks are currently missing.
I'm sure there's an explanation later, believe it or not, there actually is one, but it's kind of jarring that they just know their names like that, you know? Like, there's not even, like, a semblance of, like, mystery of why they know the names, it's just, oh, we're just diving right into it now. And it's about to get a whole lot worse.
Missing? Who's missing?
What is happening? You know it's bad when you're getting second-hand embarrassment on behalf of the actors. And I take no pleasure in saying that about Wanda Sykes, but look, it's not her greatest day at the office here. They kind of build up this introduction like a song number's about to kick off with fish models from the ceiling and everything, but she just kind of awkwardly struts in and the music just crunkily fades out. It's such a weird beat, man. So yeah, here's our main villain, and somehow the Cyclops from the first movie, without any dialogue, has more going for them than this lady. I get it, you're brought onto a movie of a, for all intents and purposes, a kid's cartoon. Your natural inkling is to ham it up. However, you can tell throughout that she's trying to play this kind of character with no guidance from the director of what tone she's meant to be striking.
Tell Cuda here who's missing.
As a result, it kind of reads as a bad SNL sketch where a Power Rangers villain is playing a corporate CEO. Wow, that's a first. SpongeBob ripping off The Simpsons. That's just an ugly CG version of Blinky the Fish. Careful guys, Disney owns that now, and they have lawyers to burn. Back to SpongeBob and Sandy, they're now wandering around Texas, and one positive thing I have is that they don't neglect the fact that SpongeBob needs water. Plus, I don't actually mind that a lot of the dehydrated poses he makes are from the original series. It's a fine line between unoriginal and fan service, and sometimes they hit it, sometimes they don't. Huh, snakes as cowboys? Sure, that checks out. I can buy that as a premise. Sandy suddenly pulling a Kill Bill. Okay, it's another pop culture reference I can do without, but this bit's fun with the snake going inside SpongeBob? Interesting. It's a serviceable enough fight scene before we get Sandy's family.
Well, look at who's back.
Nice. Would have been nice to have had that set up in the status quo we didn't get, but I guess Sandy's arc begins 20 minutes into this movie. I'm only kidding, they don't get a proper arc at all in their movie. Initially, it looks like it's just the Mario-coded dad, but the whole lot turn up to fight these snake guys. As for the family themselves, I didn't really leave this movie remembering much about them, but I don't necessarily have any complaints. However, as they drive off, it turns out that they all make the annoying sounds like SpongeBob.
Let's roll!
5 hours later.
I may actually have to get some sensory earplugs to watch the rest of this movie. Otherwise, it's another SpongeBob road trip scene. Told ya. And if you need a break from them going for the same concept for a third SpongeBob movie now, it's time for a palate cleanser more of the lame villain.
I want that sponge!
I have no idea what this character is meant to be. In a movie version of a cartoon, the approach of playing it like a cartoon villain could definitely be the way to go. I'm thinking of Steve Martin in Looney Tunes Back in Action.
We must not find the location of the diamond before we do.
However, in order to forgive the complete lack of a solid character, you've got to at least give her some funny lines, you know? Not just different ways of saying, "Get me that sponge." We then get yet another movie using a lo-fi looking commercial to explain the corporate villain's plan, with the same Hanna-Barbera style animation take as that of the Chicken Run 2 scene. Except this time, we're cloning characters to death instead of turning them into nuggets. I'd say Aardman should be suspicious how similar this scene is, but they're working with Netflix too, and I guess Netflix can't sue themselves. It's not all a rip-off of that scene though, with some of the infomercial just kind of looking awful. It's kind of made to look like it has viral internet trash qualities, but by someone who is completely out of touch with that culture. It just sounds like Nickelodeon as a company in general, to be honest. Seeing as they couldn't be bothered to put much into the execution of the villain, they just use this infomercial to explain the entire villain's plot. But anyway, we then learn that the grand plan is to put the Bikini Bottom residents into a soda stream looking thing so they can breathe on land and then mass clone them so they can be sold as pets. Yeah, that's what we're going with. And for whatever reason, the core cast of SpongeBob SquarePants, which as far as I can see doesn't exist as a globally recognized cartoon character in this universe, are now the star attractions that are going to make her millions. And seeing as how he's otherwise doesn't have a role in this movie but be amongst the town that has been kidnapped, we also get a brief cut to Plankton to give his thoughts on the cloning plotline. And no, I'm afraid he doesn't call it out as it being really dumb. Instead, we see his various attempts at cloning himself, including an Abraham Lincoln version. No need, Plankton. We've already got a mutated clone of you for a president. Again.
Yes! Doom! Terror! Find me that sponge!
Again, this is most of her dialogue. Back with the Cheeks, we learn some stuff about the family. Namely, that they have a family circus. And to be fair, I probably will need to rewatch Madagascar as a palate cleanser after this, so thank you, movie.
Poke it up, poke it up, poke it up, Afro!
Really?
Also, shock, horror, some attempt at a character arc for Sandy with her family here, and some indication of why she left them for Bikini Bottom.
First Granny, then me, then you.
Why is that familiar?
Not me, not Hermione, you.
As clear from the rest of the family sticking together as one unit, there's pressure on Sandy to stay with the herd and run the family business, which is a great angle of expanding her backstory in a way that's consistent with the series. Why isn't this the focus of the movie? This scene is pretty much the most we get of this before we're launched right back into the cloning Bikini Bottom for pets storyline. And I think there's a version of this movie where these two do work well together. We know from Sandy's backstory two major things. She's a scientist from the surface on a research project, and she left her family in Texas. There's a solid movie in those two plot points which can put the focus on Sandy as a protagonist. You can still have these stakes whilst giving Sandy a solid emotional arc. Unfortunately, the movie I'm describing is the Sandy Cheeks movie, Saving Bikini Bottom, when we actually got Saving Bikini Bottom! A Sandy Cheeks movie. Hey there, you made it halfway through this video, so come along and subscribe if you haven't already. And let's get back to the second half of the video. We actually got Saving Bikini Bottom! A Sandy Cheeks movie, you know, bit of a difference. The story is there, but Nickelodeon clearly have no confidence on putting too much focus on Sandy in her own movie. Which begs the question, what was the point in even making this? It still would have been a bad movie, but at least if you just titled this as another SpongeBob movie, we may have walked away from this one appreciating that there was some focus on Sandy. I don't think people would say it's false advertising if you suddenly focus on another character. However, particularly seeing how integral SpongeBob comes to the third act as a Sandy Cheeks movie, this ain't it.
She can do whatever she wants as long as it's in Texas.
Yes, we've seen this overbearing parent trope a million times before, but at least it shows some semblance of an attempt at an emotional conflict. It's hard to not spot the missed opportunity here. And the most frustrating thing here is, this is a franchise that has pulled it off before. The first SpongeBob movie was about having both the hilarious and wide-scale plotline whilst also maintaining an emotionally focused character arc. Just like SpongeBob goes from struggling with his immaturity to ultimately embracing who he is, this movie should have had that focus on Sandy working out the balance between her independence and her family. They don't have the excuse that SpongeBob is a cartoon, so it's hard to add feature-length dimension to a character from a 10-minute cartoon because it's literally been done before. In fact, they did it 20 years before this one. When this raccoon turns up as well, it just reminds me that the animation here is not settling with me either. I think specifically how the animated characters blend in with the live action environment is the problem. To put it simply, they don't. Honestly, the cartoon versions of these characters would have worked a lot better. Maybe it's just me, but the appeal of seeing a sort of worlds collide premise of cartoon characters entering the real world comes from them looking like they do in the cartoons. Kind of like when Jimmy Neutron met Timmy Turner and they crossed over into each other's art styles. It was cool to see their actual art styles, even if it was reflected into somebody else. We wouldn't have wanted a weird third design that's a blending of the two to make it work. That's just so diluted. And here, it kind of just all blends into this one ugly, oversaturated, half-real world. And just as I zone into the things that disappoint me about this movie, we're back to the villains.
Maybe this is one of those scary sleep movies.
Has Patrick been watching ASMR? In another unconvincing outburst, Tsunami, yes, that's genuinely the character's name, elects to shake a mini-apocalyptic event into Bikini Bottom.
My leg again!
Oh, they really just want to obliterate the reputation of this joke, don't they? Oh, give me strength, and they've even given her a pug as a Dr. Evil cat. There's classic moustache-twirling villain, and then there's a hollow avatar of a classic moustache-twirling villain. I'm really struggling for compliments, but I guess the fish food resembling Krabby Patties is kind of creative. It kind of marries together the look of real fish food with what the in-universe characters eat, so it's a nice enough detail. Of course, this is a trick, and to everyone's surprise, the 3 remaining main characters are chosen as the first test subjects of the Soda Stream. Now able to breathe on the surface, man, this plot is so dumb. It's not really made clear if this means they can no longer breathe underwater. Squidward, sort of seeming happy about this, then leads us into another terrible song that they only do one verse of as they know it's terrible too. Complete with him dancing around a Singing in the Rain lamppost in a song that sounds nothing like it, but I guess is probably a reference to how he's now out of the water?
I'm breathing air. Oh, the oxygen.
There's about 3 song numbers in this that they only half commit to for less than half a minute. All put together with the mindset of the campfire songs are fan favorites, so we have a license to make every song have the same deliberately on-the-nose quality. Unfortunately for them, the campfire songs still adheres to the basic rules of songwriting. Enter the worst children ever.
Bring in the focus group.
Time for those noise-sensitive earplugs again. Honestly, if you wanted to slow down the global birth rate, just rickroll everyone with this one clip. In fact, Durex should probably just play this clip and use it for their adverts at this point. I know this is going for the horror Toy Story 3 nursery scene, but considering Patrick is an actual creature and not a toy, them stretching him here is actually kind of horrific. Which is weird because much worse happens to him in the cartoons, but putting him into this real world setting, seeing this 3D version of him being stretched apart by 2 live action children is kind of nasty. Well, that is kind of what post-classic SpongeBob loved to do, the gross out humor, so it's on brand, I guess. It's just on the wrong brand. Meanwhile, the Cheeks family are being chased down by the police.
Uh-oh, that's the fuzz.
After years of this band of squirrels operating a vehicle around Texas without trouble, suddenly, it now becomes a problem. To get them away before it's too late, the Cheeks put Sandy and SpongeBob into their circus cannon, and with one quick line from her mum,
I just want to say...
You can tell us the next time you visit.
that arc of Sandy's boundaries with her family is seemingly resolved. No big moment of Sandy having to face up to her mum on the issue or nothing. Her mum just sort of changes her tune in the heat of the moment. In other words, the closest we have to an internal conflict for Sandy lasts for about 10 minutes in the midpoint of the movie. Now we gotta stick with the terribly acted clone bikini bottom villain plotline. No need to get into Sandy's clearly complicated relationship with her family any further. And here we go to the water park scene from the trailers where SpongeBob tickles people's feet. Whatever floats your car, my guy. Turns out, it's an incredibly brief part of the movie.
Put those grippers away!
Those dogs are barking.
But the fun doesn't last for long as the villain's pug turns up. Honestly, I initially thought this was just a random pug just getting super worked up over SpongeBob and Sandy, as I'd forgotten that was what was on her lap. I was kind of disappointed when I did remember, as the idea that it's just a random pug was actually kind of funny. And... the dog drowns. Oh, no, not really, he's back. Oh, he's now stuck in a drain with no obvious way to recover him. And now the drain's filling up. The dog drowns. And through the drain pipe, there they are, with relatively little peril, they've gotten to the lab. If only Shell City was that easy in the first movie. This is a classic misstep with basic storytelling. For anyone who's seen what South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone have to say on narrative principles, you always need to look at your story points and make sure each step goes, this happens because this happens, and therefore this happens. So far in this Sandy Cheeks movie, we've just had a straight run of this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. It's just not interesting. Even for the young audiences this is intended for. It's just been... they landed in Texas, and then they faced some snakes, and then the Cheeks family conveniently showed up in the exact same spot, and then they were driving along with the Cheeks family. You see what I mean? Getting to the lab, they are then immediately captured, of course. And Sandy's faced with what transpires to be her old scientist ex-buddies. And considering how Sandy's science cohort have always been left ambiguous in the show, this is a massive anticlimax, really. There's one episode of the show where she gets visited by the firm, and they are monkeys. British monkeys. The leader being voiced by comedy legend Rick Mile, or for you guys in the States, Drop Dead Fred. The concept of a bunch of scientific land mammals having an organization surveying undersea life was a pretty cool idea to see in the show, and that's the kind of thing I would have loved to have seen more of for that organization. This one white room with these one-note human villains is such a dissatisfying retcon of the backstory implicated in that episode. Why does this otherwise completely human-operated laboratory have one squirrel employee? Having an organization that was made up of multiple animal scientists would have both made more sense for Sandy's backstory and probably been a lot more interesting than the Wanda Sykes tantrum machine we got. And I mean machine more literally than you think. But first, we have a deep fake flashback with Wanda Sykes' head superimposed onto a child actor. It's horrific. I get it's done deliberately to look funny, but the problem is, it isn't funny. It just looks like a bad special effect. When your CGI in a 2024 movie is outshone by Spy Kids, you know you're doing something wrong. However, the tragic backstory that unfolds is not the fact that this child was born with the green screen face of a 60-year-old comedian. No, it's just the fact that she couldn't cuddle sea creatures in bed because they kept dying. Oh my god, someone call the Pixar theory, guys. I think they just found the adult version of Darla from Finding Nemo. She even says in this scene that she comes from a wealthy family. You know who makes a lot of money in this world? Dentists! Anyway, just as you think we've seen the last of Wanda Sykes having her head badly imposed onto another body, this happens.
That little girl?
Yep, losing her original body through her fish-hugging antics, her face is now all that's left and the rest of her is a robot. To be fair, I wasn't expecting that. It looks awful, but it is a surprise. We're fully into Spy Kids territory now. If you've removed all shots of SpongeBob characters, I'd have bought that this is a Spy Kids movie. We then get the reveal that the reason why they are so familiar with all the characters is that this was secretly why they sent Sandy down there all along. Again, This is a great premise and twist for Sandy's story. It's just completely wasted on these villains. Imagine if they had gone with that multi-species science hub, and then we got some flashbacks of Sandy being friends with her fellow scientists, and then we got this moment where they turn on her, revealing that her entire time assigned to Bikini Bottom was all part of this plan. That would have genuinely been a solid emotional beat for her as a character, and this moment where her entire presence in the series is turned on its head would have been genuinely impactful. But who am I kidding? This was just pooped out by Nickelodeon so they could taste some sweet Netflix $. Instead, we get this weird reaction from the other characters that's half played as the big betrayal moment, but not fully, as it's quite clear she had no idea about any of this. It's yet another awkwardly executed attempt at emotion, which should have been so much more. Ah well, let's kill SpongeBob. Yep, they put SpongeBob in the cloning machine where it's established that all of the clones of SpongeBob will also entail the original SpongeBob getting broken apart. And that's exactly what happens. Sorry, kids.
Do not pop SpongeBob! It's the only thing I'll ever ask of you!
They really thought they'd get away with this dialogue just because Mr. Krabs is saying it. They don't. Clancy Brown is trying his best with what he has, but it just comes with a really strange vibe where all of his lines are just kind of re-emphasizing what's happening in the plot.
Do not give it a little time for them to grow!
See what I mean? However, as SpongeBob is completely broken up into the mini ones, the machine gets knocked over. And as the little SpongeBobs start running around and talking, the voice kind of sounds like they've also minion-coded him. You've got loads of little yellow characters running around, it's gonna happen, I guess. With a little pep talk from one of the Sponge minions, Sandy gets mad and uses her hamster wheel to enter final battle mode now.
You're gonna pay for those crimes, Pinhead!
Oh, this is so bad. Man, I hope Wanda Sykes can at least walk away from this with a decent paycheck. On paper, I'm sure the memo, "We want you in the new SpongeBob movie," sounded like a great idea. One moment you're signed on to be the villain in a movie of a world-famous IP, the next you're a head on a robot, unconvincingly fighting a squirrel. How the mighty can fall.
Science!
Oh god, why? Obviously, after the first Netflix-released SpongeBob movie, I didn't have a lot of hope for this one. The marketing choices and the title change just worsened it further. But still, I would have loved to have been surprised here. Indeed, I have to say, this is the worst of these SpongeBob movies. Pardon the pun, but it is a shell of what SpongeBob was in its glory days. I wasn't expecting much, and it still managed to disappoint me. Mainly because I could see how, within this dreadful movie, there was a solid idea for a Sandy Cheeks story. The reveal that her transfer to Bikini Bottom was all part of a scheme the whole time? Great idea! And as a kid, I'd always wanted an episode where they went to Texas. But cut to 2024, and I got a whole movie of that, and it is awful. And of course, the full irony of villains trying to take the SpongeBob brand and clone it a million times to put it as far out as possible in a way that the characters don't want to be cloned and re-commercialized for the profiting of a corporation is completely lost to a company like Nickelodeon, Paramount, and Netflix. Even just seeing Steven Hillenburg's name in the credits makes me sad. He created something that defined a whole generation with an original sensibility in humor and animation. However, now he's no longer with us. There's no true creative voice behind it anymore. It's just the character designs and voice actors being used as a front for an empty brand being puppeted by committee. Give it another 20 years and we'll be looking at a smiling sponge that is no more than a symbol. And then into this awkwardly animated dance with Wanda Sykes trying to look like her head is reacting to the robot body that wasn't there when she recorded it. I'm guessing the writers went with the logic that it worked with the Gooby Goober Rock song, so it should work here. Just comparing the two scenes makes me sad for the whole SpongeBob franchise. Instead, it's just kind of a worse version of the Kraken scene in Hotel Transylvania 3. And I don't even like that movie either. We've seen the climax resolves itself with the characters awkwardly trying to join with a dance number trope a million times over, and the 1,000,001th time here is just as uninspiring. And then... murder! Wow, not even Plankton gets done that dirty. Not to mention, we instead get the final form of her horrifically green screen head. It's somehow now become one with the mutant fish. Of course, that's the villain arc resolved, I guess. And I'd say what happens next, but we have the continuing commentary of Mr. Krabs to fill in the gaps anyway.
If you squish them together, the little SpongeBobs reconstitute.
They really didn't even try with his character in this movie. On the other hand, Squidward's sheer joy in squishing tiny SpongeBobs is probably the closest to funny we get in this. Of course, they weren't just gonna let the Cheeks family not pop up again. Here they are, wrangling the tornado from earlier. Again, this is a tornado that only appears for the plot reason and appears in the same place twice because they went to the same location. It's stupid. I hate this tornado, man. As for how they escaped the police, just accept it. It happened off screen. It's fine.
Not unless you call society and all its rules a jail.
Hold up, we got Cedric the satirical squirrel over here. As they try to band together as the fishbowl containing Bikini Bottom starts to crack, the turned good lab assistants just kind of watch. Like, they're not the ones that got it in this room in the first place. You'd at least think they have an inkling of how to move this giant fishbowl.
How about 2 families?
2 families?
On to full Fast and Furious territory. Sandy is of course referring to the SpongeBob gang as her family now. But this time with...
I'm doing science every day.
I'm not sure what happens has anything to do with science, but that's SpongeBob for you. Indeed, she uses the obvious solution of using both families to create an electrical supercharge to send the fishbowl into space. Obvious when you think about it. I find her including Mr. Krabs and Squidward as her family is kind of inconsistent with the series, but it comparatively feels redundant to the bigger issues. I mean, generally, from the second movie onwards, the core cast kind of just abandoned their dynamics in the show to form one gang. Of course, the space travel resolution works seamlessly, and they land back in Bikini Bottom exactly where it was. I'm not necessarily mad about that. That is something that would just happen in the cartoon.
Days later.
And yeah, the circus resolution is nice enough, it's fine. It's the resolution to a less than fine movie, but sure. Hey, even the scientists are enjoying the show, clearly with the same green screen head technique. They do establish they've been shrunk, but yeah, this still looks kind of bad. And we finish off in full circle form with another terrible song. And this time they perform the whole thing. That's nice, the bare minimum.
Hey, Pa, your girl done good.
It also kind of just sums up this movie as a whole, as it kind of repeats a lot of the I'm Sandy and I like science qualities of the first song. It's perfect. It highlights how little an insight this movie's given us into the character. This is what we would expect at the start of the movie, and besides her having a family, that's how we're ending it. If they'd dedicated more time to establish more of a rift between her and her family, this coming together resolution would have been somewhat rewarding. But they didn't. They gave equal screen time to the villain cutscenes instead. And just as you thought it was done, we get a final shot of that awfully rendered mutant fish version of the villain. Finn. The end. That's the movie. And now I'm sad. In measuring this franchise's decline, it's only fitting that this was released almost 20 years after the original SpongeBob SquarePants movie. What was once a series capable of a theatrically released film that was both financially and critically successful is now just one part of the chum bucket of movies being thrown onto Netflix. That was the terrible Sandy Cheeks movie. The Plankton movie is here. I absolutely adore when a new SpongeBob movie comes out because I'm a big fan of terrible movies. It's just an open goal, easy to dunk on. It's not even been a year since the last one of the easily worst SpongeBob movies we've ever seen in the entire franchise. The bar just gets lower, and that means I get all the more enjoyment. You know how the story goes with the SpongeBob movie franchise. To be honest, there's only one good SpongeBob movie. It's the first one, right? Something about it just really strikes at the core of what a SpongeBob story is. Most likely just because it was actually created by the original creator. In that movie, not only were the jokes stellar and iconic, every scene having so much comedic potential, with gags that are still immortalized decades later now, like random real-life body parts coming into the equation. But also at the same time, with that first movie, there's a real emotional core as we really dive into what SpongeBob is as a character, the flaws that they have, and how to overcome any kind of arc with a sense of progression from an otherwise serialized and non-progressive story in the series. In trying to think of any story to really explore the SpongeBob character, I feel like the first SpongeBob movie is the only real good one you can do, and every movie since has been progressively worse from there. Add on the fact we're dealing with a modern version of Paramount that loves to do just weird things. Their live-action representation really has a strange tone that personally does not jive with me, even when Paramount do a live-action thing for a franchise that is doing well right now. I'm gonna admit, I don't think it's very good either. It's not even good there, I'll be honest. Not in my opinion, anyway. And over the years, we've seen the SpongeBob movies become more and more live-action focused, culminating in the Sandy Cheeks movie, just the worst of the bunch. And now, not even 12 months later, Plankton the movie exists. Of course it does. The next extension of let's pick a side character to make a movie out of, and look at the damn thing. The visuals behind this movie are somehow cheaper than last time. It is a real noticeable downgrade in the visual artful craft of what the SpongeBob franchise used to be. But hey, it's 3D, not 2D, so that's a plus. Now, with this just being a few months after Sandy Cheeks, technically, I mean, it also was leaked a year ago, so it's kind of the same-esque time period. You would expect it would have many of the same tropes of just the worst SpongeBob movie we've seen so far. And to me, one of the most egregious things is the obvious problem with making a side character movie in whatever the hell do you do with SpongeBob. In the Sandy Cheeks movie, he becomes the painful comic relief character that has all pain inflicted upon him because Squidward's not in the picture, and Plankton is usually otherwise the pain guy. In this one, there's at least more opportunities in the sense that Plankton is the guy that gets all the pain humor. So what does SpongeBob get delegated to? Well, I'll tell you what, it's different from the Sandy Cheeks movie. See, the plot of Plankton the movie isn't necessarily just showing Plankton's side of a SpongeBob story. No, it's actually the matter of he goes through the usual routine of being evil and not doing very well, just getting that serialized standard routine of the episodes from the TV series. And then, in failing after 25 years, the SpongeBob movies love to be so distant future for some reason, Karen then gets the focus, being the big bad, actually going off with their own plan after being dismissed by Plankton for so many years. What follows is then a plot of Plankton trying to get back Karen with the help of SpongeBob on the side, as a real overhead apocalypse takes place above Bikini Bottom, Karen becoming a giant robotic titan, essentially. All the while, as Plankton is going through this, he is telling us the origin story between himself and Karen. Now, obviously with SpongeBob going on as long as it has, this backstory already exists, or at least backstories with all sorts of other characters, namely Plankton and Mr. Krabs, and this movie does 100% right over that. Is that a problem? Yes, it kind of is expected after going on so long. It's the same thing of how Homer Simpson now is brought up from the 90s, when he clearly was a dad in the 90s. We saw that for ourselves. Well, I was like -1, but sure. But the idea of doing an origin story for Plankton as we go along on this adventure, I don't entirely hate. And the gimmick for SpongeBob through this whole thing is he essentially wants to play psychiatrist. In the plot, he's been reading a psychiatry book, is deciding to cosplay as, I assume, Sigmund Freud or something, and the whole time is asking for Plankton's backstory in order to psychoanalyze him and work out what's the core of his problems. And that, I think, really works for him. Going back to the first SpongeBob movie, some of the things I really liked in some of the representations of SpongeBob as a character is he would go on to roleplay and then just be fully immersed in that roleplay. And this is exactly the same here. He's not delegated to a weird side character doing goofy things to a point that goes out of his character limits. He does do the quirky things, he keeps shape-shifting and doing his stuff, but he's always coming back to helping Plankton as an aide and not doing it correctly, because he's an idiot. And that's correct, I would say. All the while with Plankton as your main character, he has more room as a protagonist to tell more comedic lines and dialogue and play around with the meta of the movie. The very opening is him saying, hey, come on, come a little bit closer, I see you, come a little bit closer, there I am. It does then go into some more cliche punchlines, like the camera hitting him in the face going too close. I think it might even be something we've seen in SpongeBob before, but it is so refreshingly on brand for how a SpongeBob story should go, to me. In fact, a lot of the jokes in this movie, I think, absolutely stick the landing. And more so than that, the tone is there. You know how I said earlier that in the first SpongeBob movie, they have a brief shot of real fleshy live action hands as a tiny little gag, and I absolutely adore that direction of jokes? It appears again in the Plankton movie a couple of times. Maybe they milk it, fair enough, but it works. There's a shot of Plankton at a giant piano playing. This is also a musical. The SpongeBob movies are musicals. I constantly forget that. And clearly you're thinking to yourself, how the hell is Plankton playing a giant piano? It slowly turns around and you see he's at a tiny piano on the piano, and then it just cuts to giant green hands, human, playing the piano. I adore that. That is a core 2004 style SpongeBob joke told successfully 20 years later. That being said, of course, it's not always going to be perfect. As I said, there's all sorts of cliche jokes in this. You've got all sorts of classics like big fights happening behind a couple clueless characters, being electrified for kissing a robot, or kooky character drinks too much coffee. You know, like, it's kind of padding in the sense of I've seen every animated movie in existence, but also I think it works, and it's kind of been a long time since I've seen a coffee joke, I'll be honest. That's full-on hoodwinked over the hedge territory. That's, in its own sense, is like 15 years old. It's also not perfect in the sense that, maybe this is a debatable point, but it does definitely heavily lie on older references in places. It's not too egregious, but it definitely knows that people liked the first SpongeBob movie, because they definitely find ways to use all sorts of elements from that first movie into this, just to be like, hey, you like this? But I think it's done well enough. It's not exactly invasive. They don't tread on the toes again. They just say, hey, remember this thing existed? These guys are still around. Oh, you might recognize that prop. But it is a little bit, you know, milky. Is that a good adjective for it? I think when I saw it at first, I thought it was a little bit cheap. But in hindsight, you know, it's harmless. Why not enjoy your successes? There have been many successes. It's not all a basement of failure. Hey there! Thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come along and subscribe if you haven't already. We're gonna do new animated reviews as they come out. All of them. Netflix, Pixar, DreamWorks, Sony, and apparently SpongeBob too. Anyway, back to the second half of our review on Plankton, the movie. More so than that, whilst the jokes are there, the character protagonist works, and even SpongeBob's role in this movie does a decent job. And there's this origin story in the back end, which, by the way, they used to showcase some more artistic styles. It's nice. It's funny that the main thing looks so cheap and 3D and bland and flat, but in the flashbacks, we get a nice black and white Fleischer-esque 2D animation. And in some imaginative parts, we see Plankton in another 2D scape that looks genuinely good. Ironic there, but also on the other idea that this is a side story from a side-based character, it means that this movie goes on to expand characters we usually wouldn't get to see. Squidward gets minimal screen time, Mr. Krabs is faintly there in the back end, Patrick pops up a little bit towards the end. But instead we get to see an expansion on Karen's side of the world, and with this, we introduce the Gal Pals. Have they appeared in the TV show? Yes, apparently we have. 2018 apparently, it's been a thing in the series. But I think it really works. Probably because it's already baked into the series. Having it be a showcase of 4 female characters all clumped together technically is a little bit of a weird age gap thing, like a teacher hanging out with their student's friend, sure, whatever. But it does explore into new territory that I otherwise haven't seen from the movies, and I think is really nice and refreshing. It opens up to some relatively simple ideas in certain places. The main action sequence for all of them essentially is a pillow fight, but I'm sure that's innocent enough, and then adds another layer, especially putting that in a plotline against Plankton. The man who has no sense of empathy or thought to apologizing to wronging someone in their relationship is a really good core theme to shove in, because it's the exact opposite and conflict that would be most fitting to this new protagonist. He's antagonistic in nature, so being addressed with having to do something emotional is exactly on point of a direction for a story on this. Other expansions we get is a basement area for the Gal Pals, as well as the university that Plankton and Karen apparently went to. Also Karen being a potato calculator back in the day. Makes sense. I love that stuff. And all through watching this movie, I was waiting for the moment when the characters would really breach out and do something uncharacteristic. It's weird doing a Plankton protagonist movie because I don't ever expect him to be good. There's a moment where he's called out as being a jerk, and I'm wondering if he's gonna 180 and stop being a jerk in some way, and he doesn't. He goes on to sing about being a jerk, and then he's like, hell yeah, I'm a jerk, and then doubles down. And I'm like, brilliant. They seem to actually understand the character that they're writing this story around, much like when they did with SpongeBob 20 years ago, 21. And though the plotline essentially goes into Plankton having to apologize to Karen, it doesn't necessarily become trying to stop world domination, because that's always been Plankton's goal all along. Sort of, because even then, they explore the element of what does he truly want? Does he want world domination? Or does he want the Krabby Patty formula? At what point does he stop? What are his limitations? And it really does a good deep dive into the ethos of Plankton. Against the slow, monotonous downfall of SpongeBob movies, it's as if the people in charge of SpongeBob's creative direction actually sat down and did a deep dive exploration to tell the best possible version of this character's story. As if they truly do love Plankton as a character, as if they truly were Plankton. And then you realize in the credits who actually wrote the story for this movie? It was Kaz, who is always in most SpongeBob projects, but also up front and center is Mr. Lawrence himself. Literally, Plankton himself helped write and create and produce, I assume, this Plankton movie. And I think that's the make or break of it. The directing as well is absolutely stellar, though I'm not a big fan of the visuals. The visual humor is certainly on point. It feels like a classic SpongeBob done in modern times, and that can be attested to David Needham's work in the directing chair. And also Chuck Klein is head of story, so it's definitely a team effort to bring this together, but there's clearly a sense of love and understanding put into this movie that I don't think the Sandy Cheeks movie had anything close to. I came into this movie absolutely ready to dunk on the next latest terrible SpongeBob movie. They just fall into our laps unwarranted every few months at this rate, and it seemed like an easy open goal to dunk on. But actually watching this movie, I am pleasantly surprised to see something that brings back that childhood wonder that SpongeBob once had. It has both a simplistic enough plot with a little bit of subversion from what you've usually seen, a good relocation for its usual protagonist in side character roles, side characters get more runtime that actually makes sense and have a nice embellishment for them, and then the main plotline is paced well, explores new territory, expands the universe, and has that emotional core that really does a deep dive on the characters this movie is meant to focus on. It's to the point you feel like you actually understand these characters more after seeing this movie. If this is the new canon, it's absolutely stellar. And the jokes and comedic style throughout are absolutely brilliant. To be fair, I love Plankton's delivery the most, I think, in all of SpongeBob stuff. They absolutely nail it in general. So of course, they're fully able to dominate within their own movie. It works really, really nicely. And then, as we come to the end of the movie, I would genuinely suggest you watch it for yourself, by the way. There's not really much to spoil on it. You can probably guess where the spoilers go, but I won't fully delve into it right now. Maybe one day we'll do an amazing on this, actually. I think I probably will. I should. This sparked something in me again, man. Completely not what I expected based on the trailer. They put all of the possible stinkers in the marketing, apparently. All the red flags I thought I saw before, non-existent. There were not too many bloated characters, it turns out. All of those different robots were all Karen anyway. But yes, once we come to the end of the movie, the really beautiful thing that brings it all together is we just literally loop it back to the beginning again. There's an opening song, and the ending song is the same song. It all goes back to one nice little knot, ending with Plankton not saying come on closer anymore. He looks at the camera, love a couple fourth wall breaks. There's a handful of these in the movie, I love them. And he's like, go away, get out of here, you've seen the movie now. Shoo, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. It's like, easily the biggest upset so far this year, the absolute biggest surprise, and I am only upset that I full-on forgot this movie was coming out today. I didn't write it in my schedule. I'm talking about it 4 or 5 hours later than I should have. This video is coming out late today, but it doesn't matter. I really do wish, despite it being a few hours, I had seen it sooner, because this is genuinely stellar. Perhaps after this, if Paramount learns something, maybe the SpongeBob movie franchise is back. Is it better than the first SpongeBob movie? Absolutely not. Unbeatable. That thing is absolutely cemented in gold. But as a surprisingly close runner-up, yeah. Plankton the movie is easily one of the best SpongeBob movies we've seen in years. The best in 20 years, because the first one was 21 years ago. And who'd have thought all you need to do is really sit down and think about it. And hey, why don't you actually get some of the crew members involved who clearly still have the heart and passion to tell good stories. Turns out when you're not just chucking them out to reach a quota, you can make some genuine art again. The soul of the Spongebob movie franchise is still out there somewhere. Just don't turn this into 6 Plankton sequels, please. And that is, at least so far, where we are with the saga of SpongeBob movies. And maybe in a year's time from this video coming out, there'll be all the more announcements going on. Hey, at least Tom Kenny gets a paycheck. We still love that guy, and all the cast to be honest. But that's more than enough monologuing about SpongeBob as a saga. For now, my name's been Daz. Congratulations for making it to the very end of this compilation, and I shall see you all in a little bit.